All right, welcome back, everybody. We got Deb back for a super special SolidJS episode. When I messaged you about this, you seemed pretty excited about the topic. You said you can talk about Solid forever. You're a core team member. Do you have a title as a core, or is it just core team member?
Just core team member.
Cool.
There's no titles within. It's more like everyone just floats around, picks the kind of stuff that they like interesting and work on that. Usually it's more like when someone is brought onto the core team, it was because of a specific reason.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what they continue doing. For me, the specific reason was the WebSocket stuff, which I haven't gotten
about.
Yeah, which I haven't gotten around to in a while, but that's something that's in the pipeline.
Sweet. Yeah, so I wanted to talk to you about a couple different things. I'm at the point now where I'm really going all in with Solid in terms of my application. It started out as like an Astro / Solid thing. Actually, no, sorry. It started as an Astro React. There was no Solid at all at the very, very beginning. And then at a certain point, when I was like in the real experimental exploratory phase, I was like, I should try and like just switch out, React for Solid, because Astro is already set up to do something like that. And I know for the most part, when you give it examples, it can be pretty good at refactoring from one thing to another. So once I made that switch, I never went back. I've been with Solid ever since, but I've been getting to the point where I was more frustrated with having the separation between the TSX files and the Astro component files, because I wasn't really doing anything with the Astro components. They were just kind of bare bones page outlines, and then everything was being done with the Solid stuff. So I've kind of refactored everything out of the Astro things, and I'm just to the point now where I have to now switch over the API routes from the Astro API routes to the Solid routes, and that's going to take a little bit of time. But everything else is pretty much ready. I'm close to making that migration.
Nice. Fine. So moving on to Solid Start finally.
Yep. Yeah. There was a moment when before I shipped that I almost moved to Solid. I had the refactor like 95% done, and then for some reason didn't quite get it to the end. But I think it was fine. Honestly, Astro was the framework I was using since like 2022. And I think it's great. It's been really good for me, but I think I'm at this point where I'm kind of ready to move on. And Solid Start, we talked about this a little bit before the stream, Dax is really heavily bought into it now. And I've seen the progression of Solid now for the last like 4 years, having known Ryan. And I feel confident that the community is large enough to sustain it and do the important things a community needs to do. And I'm also in a place where I'm moving away from any dependencies I can. I'm trying to go really low dependency. So I'm not looking for a million community packages. At that point, I see this now kind of as a drawback to React and Node especially. I'm leaning more into Bun now because, it's a huge attack surface. Like there's been crazy massive hacks that are affecting devs' personal machines. And I was 0.1 package away from one. Chalk 5.6.1 was compromised, and I was running Chalk 5.6.0 in one of my applications. So if I bumped the number on the wrong day, I would have been compromised, and that freaks me out.
Yeah, I'll admit I've heard a lot about this recent NPM hack that I've read nothing about. I really need to catch up on that.
It's a big one because it's basically just slipping stuff into the install scripts. So when you do that NPM I, you're opening yourself up to downloading anything off the internet that could run any code on your dev machine,
Damn, that's basically like the log, like very similar to the log4j stuff that happened.
I'm honestly surprised this doesn't happen more often. The fact that this doesn't happen every week is kind of impressive. But
I feel like this happens a lot. It doesn't get caught a lot.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's probably true also. But now that Frost's company Socket is out there, it's like a company dedicated to doing the security work NPM does not do for some reason.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but yeah, I definitely feel the feeling of drawback that React's ecosystem brings. I think Dax put it very nicely a while ago, which is that React's ecosystem is kind of like a garage, just extremely full of things where you have to sift through the garbage to find the things that you need. And smaller, like Solid Svelte ecosystems are like well-organized drawers.
Yeah, because there's not going to be 3 competing form libraries. There's going to be the one form library people are going to use if they even want a form library.
Yeah.
So what's up with Solid 2.0? Is that a thing that's actually like coming soon, or is it just like kind of a vague future things that are being worked on in the framework?
Yeah, I am very glad that you asked. Solid 2.0 is basic, like it's very close to completion. There's like some final kind of bug fixes and small API design things that are going on right now. But other than that, it's like mostly built, or at least in the experimental phase. So there's a roadmap for Solid 2 on GitHub somewhere, where Ryan puts it like experimental, alpha, beta, then stable, or like release candidates. So experimental phase is where like we're just building and prototyping the actual library itself. Once is this the road to Solid 2.0?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So experimental is where like we are. Let me just share my screen.
Yeah.
And quickly go over that. Okay. So yeah, let's get to this list in a bit.
Like 1 on the font.
One more. Okay.
Yep.
Let me just do that, and yeah, get rid of the sidebar. You see, yeah, experimental is where we are today, or where we were on Feb, and where we still are. Mostly because like there's a, I mean, yeah, no, this was just gonna take a while, anyways. Like Ryan likes to do his stuff in a way like he will build as much as possible before talking about it with anyone, or before like really marketing it or pushing for like any sort of marketing. And once it's built, he would want to like speed run through the rest of the release candidates, like like let's just get this out there. So experiment, that's why it's taking a bit longer in experimental. And the main idea is, again, like get feature parity, client side, SSR, hydration, stuff like that. I would say that we might be anywhere from like 1 month to 6 months.
Yeah, sure. I remember like when Redwood was getting towards 1.0, it ended up being like over a year after the time we had first said we were hoping to get it out by.
Yeah, I mean, this happens all the time. React compiler, they spent like 5 years on it when they thought that it might be like a 2 or 3 year project.
But it sounds like right now people can run experimental 2.0.0. Is that branch is like public?
Yes, it is. The branch, the npm package is public as well, so you can install and start playing with it. There's like some stat builds as well. There's a GitHub repo template that was set up by Brennels, one of the community members, one of the fellows actually now. So yeah, all that is there. And then in the alpha stage is where we're like getting more community feedback, more than we already have, but more like formalizing the changes that we are making in RFCs, so that it's more clear about like exactly what's going on. And then beta, like start implementing router, solid start, meta.
Yeah, that's probably what I'll get involved, and hopefully I'll have the solid start migration done by then.
Yeah, exactly. So UI components, tan stack, all of that stuff, and then the release candidate. So that's where we are right now. The experimental, we're hoping goes out like anywhere between 1 month from now. And
I guess I want to step back and ask a broader question. Like, it's because it's not entirely clear from this, because I don't think that was the point of this. But like, what are we getting from 2.0? Like, what is new? What is better? What are the improvements? What's the point of like having a new version?
Yes. So here's like a brief list, or very list with a bunch of jargon words.
Yeah, mostly are things that I would already assume are in 1.0. So I don't understand exactly what any of this means.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I would say the highlight feature is non-nullable async, and the way the way you can kind of understand it is that currently you might be using like a create resource to fetch data within Solid components. And what, like if you fetch data that's of a user type.
I'm not. I don't have a single create resource in my entire app.
Do you have create async?
Let's see.
If you're using Solid, you're not using Solid Start. You're not fetching data
Right.
within Solid right now. You're probably doing it through Astro.
That's coming through Astro. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah. So, but you can imagine like using React query with React, right? Basically, what any data fetching library these days give you is that, let's say you fetch data of the user type, then what you get back on the other end is user or undefined. Or in Solid's case, it would be a signal of user or undefined, right? Which makes sense because initially the user is not going to be there. It's going to be undefined. And then at some point when the data fetching completes, the state updates, and now you have the user object. That makes sense. But this gets flipped with Solid 2.0. So let me share a different screen where we have like a demo for this. So it's a very simple demo where we have a counter, and every time you click the number, it increments, and it gets just a random sentence based on that number.
Do you bump up the font on the editors? Yeah.
Okay, so let's. Oh no, I don't want bolt.new. Let's hop into the code. So I have create async here. The first thing is that this message, this was also being fetched here. So get hello is, get hello is just returning hello world, and they're artificial timeouts. So it's not a real server here, but it gets the point. But get hello returns a promise of string, and you just pass it into create async like this. And what you get back on the other side is an accessor of string, or a function that returns a string. You don't get string or undefined or string or null. That's where the non-nullable comes from. The signal that you get back just has the data in it. So, and same thing here. So get phrase, it takes a number. So the number that we have on the counter returns a promise of string. We pass it into create async, and what we get back is an accessor of string, not string or undefined. And even here, you can see that we are calling dot to uppercase on it. If this was undefined, we would have to put a question mark here. And if we didn't, it would throw a type error and it would fail the build, right? Or if you're checking for types within your build process. But it's not doing that here because it's just returning string and everything just works. So yeah, that's the core idea, which is it really streamlines how you connect like any asynchronous resource anywhere. It doesn't add like this extra complexity of or undefined, or adding like loading states, error states. Those are all things that you can do using helpers. The core experience is that you just call get hello and you get data back.
Totally. Yes. One of the things I loved most about Redwood is their cells did tons of management in terms of the fetching and managed all four states, either success, error, empty set, or something in it, like number of items or whatever. So yeah, this is great. This is stuff that's going to be super duper important once I'm fully on the solid start train.
Yeah, definitely. And then the thing that's really nice about this create async is that it plays really nicely with Suspense. How much have you used, or how familiar are you with Suspense from React, or maybe even
pretty familiar? Yeah.
Okay. So we are fetching data here in this component. And if you have used like Suspense with React, you would expect that, okay, now I got a wrap phrase counter with a suspense boundary so that when it starts fetching the data, it can suspend, and whatever's above this phrase counter component can suspend, right? That's not a thing with Solid because components don't exist in Solid. So you can actually put a suspense boundary wherever you want. So here's the loading phrase counter, which shows up initially when, so let's increase this to like 5,000. So you see that loading phrase counter here, which is from this suspense boundary, even though the create async is up here. Because in Solid, the thing that actually matters is where you get the data from the signal, where you read it, not where you create it. And this means that we can go even further in. We can add a suspense boundary here. So we have a very simple message component. that takes some text and renders it using a paragraph. So this is this here. And this is not fetching any data, but we are wrapping this message component with a suspense. And when I refresh, I need to reduce this one and increase this one. So now I'm going to see this suspense boundary for a while. So it almost like completely decouples where you fetch data and where you put these suspense boundaries, which is not very much not the case in React. So this is something I'm super excited about, because you never need to worry about where you're fetching data, how deep down it is. You can always just put your suspense boundary anywhere and everything still works the exact same way. And the same thing with error boundaries.
Yeah, no, that seems really cool, because that's how I remember when Suspense was coming out for React. It's like that was like the pitch, it's like, yeah, we suspense boundary, you just throw it around your thing wherever the thing is loading, you just do suspense boundary, and it's never that simple, But I think this is one of the things that's cool with Solid is you really take your time with stuff and dial it in to where you get the nice DX as well, I feel like.
Yep. And now let me show you this second.
Fuzzy says great work and that he's been really looking forward to this API.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, especially the fact that you can just continue like deriving data on top of it. So I have the phrase here, which is async, then I have the upper phrase, and then upper phrase is what gets passed into this message. So like at no point it needs to really know about what the async what the async stuff is. Now if we do want the loading indicators a lot of time, like the like if it doesn't return undefined is some, like a lot of people use it as a way to like indicate loading. But here when you click on it, you see everything goes that's just taking too long. But yeah, we have like a pending indicator here where click on something and it goes what, transparent? I don't know. The opacity decreases. And you can do that with the isPending helper, which comes from Solid now. It's in this is a new API, just like create async. But with isPending, you just give it a function, and you can read any data within isPending, and it'll just tell you like if there's anything that you read in here that's pending, it's going to return true. So it's not, and you can see we're using it with create memo. If this was using create resource or any existing data fetching primitive in like React or Solid or really any framework, then this would have to return like an is loading or is pending. Like is loading. Right. And now like this is the only thing that you can pass forward. Like, and you have to always hold this piece of state. You have to pass it down to any children that might need it. But with this, it's more like just use this and read whatever data you want, and we'll let you know if it's pending or not. This can even work if I have like class, let's say, is there tailwind in here? No, there's not, isn't. Anyways, but if it was like, and is pending props.text. So and this would tell you like if like whatever the props.text depends on, if that's pending, then this will return true. So we don't need to pass an additional is pending down to child components. Child components can just use this to infer like what's happening. So this saves a lot of like prop drilling problems, and like basically reduces the amount of state that you might have just by streamlining.
Yeah, that's gonna be one of the big questions once we get more into my app, is the state management thing. And that's also what kind of is informing some of the LLM conversation as well. In terms of that big list of new features for 2.0, was there other things you wanted to hit on besides this one?
Let's see, let's go back to that list. I should probably just share my entire screen.
Yeah, I hate sharing tabs. It's super frustrating.
Yeah. Okay. So mutable
flush boundaries. I've never heard that term before.
Flush boundaries is basically like a fancier or probably more internal name for like components like suspense and error boundary and the new activity component that React released. We have a version of that as well in 2.0.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Does isPending have a second argument?
A second argument? It does. Is that like a chat question or something?
Yeah, from Brenly.
Yeah, from Brenly. Yeah. So isPending has a it's so I can talk about the second argument, like, but that goes a bit more in depth about like how isPending and suspense, how that works. Is that something we want to go into?
Yeah, I mean, if someone's asking about it, sure. Yeah, go as deep as you want.
Yeah, Brenly, I'm pretty sure already knows, but it's so there's the isPending, which like returns true or false, but there's also the suspense. So there's two different ways of handling like loading or pending asynchronous states in Solid or in Solid 2.0. Suspense only works for initial rendering or when the data isn't there. So if you render a component, you read some async data and there's no data there, like it was just created, then it's gonna it's gonna suspend, and whatever is the nearest suspense boundary is going to show its fallback. But if you update something, so if there's already async data and now it's being refetched, it's actually not going to trigger the suspense boundary. React currently does that, where on anything async, it's just going to bail out to the suspense fallback. And you have to explicitly use transitions to avoid that. In Solid 2.0, that doesn't happen by default. And that's why the isPending helper exists. So when something is updating, like you already have the user and now you're fetching the ID changed and you're fetching new user details. You still have the data of the old user, but you can use it, and you can still use that to render the UI.
Hey, we got Ryan in the stream. Or use deferred value. Also, what's up, Nikki T, watching from LinkedIn. Crazy, man.
Oh my god. LinkedIn streams, that takes me back.
Wow, we're blowing up. I got like 200 people watching me on X right now.
Nice. Yeah, use deferred value is an interesting hook. I don't know if like
he's back on Twitch. We're good.
Perfect. Yeah, honestly, I don't even know if like a majority of React developers know what use deferred value is.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, but yeah, the idea is that isPending is going to only work for the second category of async, when the data, you already have the old data and the new data is being refetched. The second argument of isPending is very specifically for like it is so that isPending does not trigger suspense. It's like almost an edge case thing where if you want to opt out of suspense at some point, you're going to use the second argument of isPending to do that. Everyone is on YouTube? Yeah, almost.
Okay, sorry. I was just opening up the editor so I can start dropping links in the YouTube description.
Yeah, and I should also drop a link to this demo that I was sharing, which has been like shared 100 times on Twitter already. I made this demo as like a like just a very quick random demo to show at my conference talk in January. And Ryan kind of just like took it and started running with it and experimenting every single async feature, async and like async errors.
Demo-based development, tutorial-based development. I think all that stuff is super great.
Yeah. I mean, it makes it it kind of like shows the point where like you can have bad demos that are not really helpful to show anything, but every once in a while you can make a demo that is like super helpful for a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, man, that's kind of what I did at many of the companies I worked at. It was like one of the main things I tried to do.
Yeah. Yeah, so I hope that answers kind of answers the question about
hopefully it does. That was pretty thorough. But I think you were about to start talking about mutable derivations.
Yeah, so mutable derivations. Okay, so we have create signal and create memo. So create signal is the one with the setter, and create memo is the derived version, right? but both of them are like immutable, as in you replace the entire value. If you don't replace the entire value, you have to specifically opt in, but like it's you use create signal and create memo when the entire value is being replaced. So you usually use it with primitive values. Create store is what you would use for when you have objects and arrays or more complex state, which is what we are going to get to when we talk about state management as well. But and create store is the version with the setter. We don't have a derived version of create store like we have create memo. Right. So it's like if you put them in a 2x2 axis, create signal and create memo, create store are 3 of them, and then there's a 4th one that's missing. That's kind of like create memo where it's derived, it doesn't have a setter, but it's like create store in the sense that it can handle like nested state with objects and trees. So that's what mutable derivations are. And there's a lot of state, like basically anytime you have a large object inside a create memo, something like that, this new primitive is going to help a lot in terms of both how you write that logic and how that updates the rest of your app in a very, very fine-grained way.
Interesting. Yeah, because the way mine is set up, it's like a 5-step form, and it starts off with the form store. That's kind of like an object that has each step, and then as you kind of go through it, it adds more and more things, and then at the end you have this big object that has like all the things that basically ends up being the show note.
Nice. Do you have any place where you're writing to the store in an effect?
So I'm not sure about in terms of the effect, but it writes to it with like every step, and then there's some times where it reaches out to save something to it, like an R2 bucket, or like read from it. But yeah, we'll get into the code later. We can get more granular on that, but continue with the high level discussion.
Yeah, but that's kind of the point of mutable derivations, where it's filling the last 25% of that 2x2 axis. So it's like create store, but it's also like create memo. Okay. There's a lot of use cases where it's needed. So for example, create selector was sorry. I don't know what's going on with my throat. So create selector was an API that we are replacing with this. There's a lot of like routing and form validation, form management APIs that could really benefit from this API as well. And we had a demo last year about like we basically took Ryan's Trellix, the Trello clone. We built our own version, and we use like we basically hacked this mutable derivations into the 1.0 API somehow in a very unsafe way, but it allows us to get like very, very nice like performance and efficiency characteristics, where in the React version it would include a lot of object cloning, component re-rendering, and reconciliation, where in the Solid version it's actually super optimal. It runs very few functions. It goes straight to the DOM updates, like basically everything that Solid is kind of stands for. And this API kind of like unlocks a whole new use case where we can be even more fine-grained with that.
It's cool. Yeah, that sounds very, very relevant to me. So thanks for explaining all that. Blazingly optimal. That's funny.
Yeah. Flush boundaries, I mentioned, it's kind of like the umbrella term for suspense, error boundary, and off-screen / activity, whatever we end up calling it. Derive signals. Again, if you have like a place where you're setting a signal inside an effect, this is going to be a more streamlined way to do that. So you can just pass the function into the create signal. Does that kind of make sense?
Sorry, say again. I was looking at something on a project.
I'm just gonna, you know what? I'm just gonna share my entire screen.
Yeah, do that.
I don't know why
so I was just thinking, I know I'm only using create effect in a couple places, so I was just trying to pull it up real quick in my app so I can get a sense of where I'm doing what. So one quick question for you. So if you have like this big form state thing, and that's kind of what you're managing throughout the course of this life cycle, would there be no signals created at all, because you would want to keep everything within that single store object?
Sure, yeah. If you have a store object, then I mean, it's really more for like how you like to organize your state. You can keep throwing everything into a giant store. That's completely fine. You can break them into multiple stores. You can have some signals.
Because this is where I think I got into trouble, is that I built it originally without using a store at all. It was just signals, and there's like these massive signals. Like when people complain about React, they show those screenshots of like the million. That's what I had, you know. And at a certain point, I'm like, this is clearly dumb. I'm supposed to be using a store here. I know that's what this is for. So then I created the store. I built that in, but I haven't now gone back and removed all of those signals. So now I have like all this crazy signal stuff happening with the store, and I need to like get rid of the signals. And I'm just thinking like, what would even be left if there were any signals? Is there some sort of transient state management that doesn't need to be in the larger store? Or even if it is something like that, would it make more sense just to simplify to keep it all in the store?
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, my personal opinion is that the less of these setters you have, the less bugs you're gonna have.
Totally,
It's kind of like the use effect, create effect problem, where ideally you want to minimize your usage of use effect / create effect. And the similar thing goes for like state, where the more like you want to derive as much of the state as you can. And only the things that you really cannot derive should be like create signal or create store with a setter, right? Now, obviously, if you have a create store, then one setter kind of like takes care of a bunch of different state, and everything is more fine-grained that way. So yeah, that is the most ideal way to do it.
Great.
Yeah, create signal is almost like a more like low-level primitive.
I was not sharing your screen for a second, but you're back on now.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, the setter was what I was talking about. Like you ideally want to minimize the setters you have, similar to how you want to minimize the effects. Talking about like derived signals. So this is a good example where we have a count and set count. Let's say we also have some or just count coming from like the parent component, right? And let's say that whenever the parent changes the count, I want to reflect that within my local state here. This might require usually to use a create effect where you would like set count props.count. You would have to do something like this. And if you were doing this in React today, you would have to do this exactly. But with the new Solid version, you can just do this props.count. So that's the idea of derived signals. Is that every signal is derived similar to create memo. It's just that create signal just gives you the setter.
Sweet. That's a term I kept hearing. Like I think on like Ryan's streams and stuff. Like he did a stream just about derived signals, didn't he?
Yes. Yeah. Honestly, like the running theme of 2.0 is that we are trying to get rid of create effect, or almost like obviously we cannot get rid of it, but almost like get rid of it from your code base. Like you should, and any excuse that you can come up with to use create effect, we will offer a better API to do that use case, so that you don't have to use create effect.
Ryan tweeted about us saying, very cool to see dev demoing the async features we've been working on. I spent so much time working on this stuff. It's a very different experience watching someone else explain or demo it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I just realized that my only recorded version of this demo is from January. And I've been playing with it since then, but I haven't
No, this is good. I might clip some stuff from this episode. I've been meaning to make clips for some of my streams. This would be a good one to do that for. I saw something about immutable stores. Once you finish up with this, that's the next thing I wanted to ask about.
Sure. Okay. Immutable stores. So we don't have stores in here, so I don't necessarily need to share my screen.
Actually, if you said you had a store demo that we were going to look at.
Yeah, it's on my desktop. It's not on my laptop, which is what I'm using right now. And honestly, like I think if you already have a form,
okay, that's fine then.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that. Immutable stores. Okay, so think about stuff like Redux and Xstate.
Yes.
These are like state libraries that work a lot on top of like immutable state, where like every time you have an update, you clone the previous object, add all the previous properties in, change the one or two things that you need to change, and return a whole new object or array, right? That's what immutable data or immutable state is, and it's one of the reasons that one of the things that React really popularized or brought into the mainstream, this idea.
Which is funny because it didn't actually have it, but it popularized it just because so everyone had to pull in Redux for their apps because they needed it.
Yeah, Redux and Xstate made it like more easier to manage with. And there are some very nice things about immutable state. Like Redux has like the time traveling dev tool where you can go back and forth
that was the initial demo that Dan Abramov gave when he first built it, and everyone was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, exactly. And
Nikki T throwing out the deep cuts.
Definitely, yeah, using Immer, and I think Immer now comes like packaged up with Redux Toolkit, because the syntax is so nice. Funnily enough, like
Solid Sustan and Joyta, I think were the other ones, right?
Yeah, they're the new ones. Yes. But yeah, so the idea is that solid stores are not immutable. Solid stores are mutable. So whatever object you start with, you make mutations to that object. Very rarely you have a scenario where you're going to clone an object or an array and then replace a whole chunk with it and then return a whole new array. You're not going to do that with solid stores. You're just going to either use the path syntax to say that users.one.name equals Anthony. You're just going to do that like you do with Immer. But Immer will still like give you a whole new object. Solid won't. Solid will just go and mutate that and then notify whoever is listening on that specific property. So
better for performance.
It is vastly better for performance. But the first thing is that you don't get time traveling. Or like you do get time traveling, but time traveling becomes way more expensive.
Yeah, I've never honestly used it, so that to me won't feel like a big drawback.
It's more like it's definitely not like a huge drawback. It's more like there are some people who want to do it, and it's more like the underlying what really unlocks time traveling is that every time the state changes, you are only changing the things that matter. But with mutable state, you have to clone and screenshot, like snapshot every single instance, which you don't need to do with immutable state. So it makes it really hard to do things like rollback. And the other thing was reconciliation. So basically, let's say you have like a users array with 100, or like some array with 100 different objects in it. You go to the server, you refetch all that data. You have a new array with 100 things in it. And you have an existing array with 100 things in it. And you now need to compare them to basically figure out what changed so that you can make the mutations to your existing array. Because again, solid stores are mutable. You have to make fine-grained mutations to it to get the performance. But if you have entirely new data from the server, now you have to go through and check every single thing to figure out what exactly to mutate on the store. So basically what React does with Virtual DOM.
Right,
but Solid only needs to do it when you give it like fresh brand new data from like a server or from some sort of serialization layer, something like that. So that's probably something that we run into a lot.
Yeah, no, that's great. That makes a lot of sense. Was there a library, like a solid library that people were using to do stuff like this, like the way there's all these React ones?
Not really, because so the solutions to these are built into Solid. So the reconcile function is built in. You can use it to like compare your store data to server data and make fine-grained.
So what is new in 2.0 related to this?
The new thing is that these capabilities are getting a lot more performant. So now you kind of have, like previously you had like mutable data and you don't get the benefits of immutable data. Now you have the benefits of both. Basically, it's best of both worlds. So you still get all the performance that we get by getting like fine-grained mutations like solid stores usually do. But the way it's internally built, like immutable, that's why it's called immutable, where it still stores, but internally it's not actually going to mutate the objects that you're working on, or at least like when you diff it. But the diffing when you get from server, that's gotten a lot more performant because the internals are immutable, and things like time traveling also get like way more viable than they were in 1.0 because again, the internals are like immutable in many cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it sounds like there's maybe a lot of performance stuff and a lot of improvements related to things that are working better kind of under the hood.
Yeah.
Are there things that are like actual new APIs or ways that developers will change the way they develop a solid app or will need to like change their mental model?
Yeah, so a couple.
Nikki T said, it still trips me up in a good way when I go from React to Solid. And I'm like, why didn't it re-render? LOL.
Yeah, it took me a while initially to wrap my head around it as well. Okay, so yeah, mutable derivation plus immutable diffable stores was what I was just talking about. Again, this doesn't it's mostly the same API. Lazy memos is probably the big one where again it's still the exact same API, but today in Solid, if you write a create memo, it'll just always be running based on its like dependencies, even if you like regardless of whether you're actually using its value or not. At this point, I think Solid might be the only framework with eager memos. Lazy memos kind of became a trend when every other framework started like picking up signals. So like React, Angular, Svelte, everyone has lazy memos or lazy signals. Solid 2.0 finally goes into the lazy direction as well. Honestly, it might be a short-term thing because eager signals come with a lot of benefits. We might just move back to it. But at least for now, lazy memos is what we are shipping with Solid 2.0, which is basically
a good thing. Those 4 grids of like lazy, eager, memo, signal, whatever the different things were.
Yeah, I had one of those. I should probably find that. But yeah, this is not going to change the mental model too much. There's just like some people who really appreciate the fact that, hey, if a signal is not being read, then it doesn't need to be run. That means we are saving a lot of like computation stuff. And then the other big one that probably people have to wrap their heads around is automatic batching. Again, this is another one of those things which is not fully clear. It might be something we roll back. But the idea is like, there was a point in React where setting some piece of state did not mean that your components are now rendered. Like you can set a bunch of state, but your components haven't yet re-rendered. The state is not yet reflected in the UI. You have to call flush sync so that, okay, now it'll go and update the UI. Rand Florence talked about it recently a bunch. So that's how Solid 2.0 is going to work now. Today in Solid, if you set some state, immediately all the UI is going to be up to date. Yeah, batch function basically. So we're basically making batch the default, and the new API is going to be like, it's probably going to be called flush sync, and that's how you're going to tell Solid that, okay, I have made my state updates, now go and re-render the UI. So it's so it's going to help in those scenarios where you have multiple states to update or multiple different signals or store values to update, and you want to do them all together. So this makes that the default.
Let's see, Fuzzy said he used it when he built cybersecurity framework.io. He's talking about batch there.
Cool. That was pretty cool.
I'm curious, what are self-healing error boundaries?
Self-healing error boundaries. So this is a very fun feature. Let me share this tab. Okay, so we're back.
So I'm thinking if there's is pending and you got error boundaries, all the stuff is here where I could build my own cell pretty easily.
Yes, yeah. So in error boundaries in Solid come with like the fallback. The first one is the first argument of the fallback is obviously the error object, right?
Yep.
And
the class.
At least this version, we don't have the class component version of error boundary that React does. And the second argument here is a reset method. So let's see if we can get this into an, okay. So we got this into an error state, right? And we have a retry button here that calls this reset method that we get from the error boundary. Now again, we have the error boundary down here. What do you imagine the retry button would do?
I have no idea.
I mean, at the very least, it's going to try to re-render everything under it, right? But we are fetching the data up here. So what failed here was this get phrase. So get phrase here has like a chance, like every now and then it's going to throw an error, right? So this is what threw an error here, which we are calling in create async up here in our component. And when you scroll down, you see an error boundary with this reset, and then we are showing our UI, right? But if you click this retry, errored again, but it's basically going to try to fetch the data again. So so earlier I mentioned how like suspense and create async are like completely decoupled from each other, where you can put a create async wherever you want, and you can put a suspense wherever you want, because the only thing that matters is where you read the data. It's similar with error boundary, where you can put the error boundary absolutely wherever you want. You can nest it down into your component tree as much as you want. But this reset is going, if something fails, like if you fail to fetch some data, the reset will go all the way up the dependency chain or dependency graph and find the thing that has failed, and it's going to retry that. So here, like, it doesn't matter where the create async or where the error boundary is. Like I could have this even right here, like this. Error boundary. Let's give it capital just for the fun of it. So now I have error boundary like deep in my message tree where I don't have any data fetching at all. And it can still retry things because it knows that it has to retry props.text, and it knows that props.text depends on upper phrase, which depends on phrase, and which is this async thing that just failed. So it can go all the way up the dependency graph, and it can retry things. So you don't need to manually, again, same thing here. Like you don't need to manually wire up these refetch functions that you would get out of like something like handstack query. You can do it from any point in the tree.
Interesting. So it makes it a lot more flexible in terms of where you can put your boundaries.
Yeah, a lot more flexible. And this is like a feature like this, like retrying on error, you would probably imagine like data fetching libraries. And yeah, of course, none of the components re-render, which is just like staying true to Solid's initial idea that components don't exist. They should just create stuff and get out of the way. Yeah, even though things are popping in and out with suspense boundary and error boundaries, none of the components in here actually get re-rendered at any point.
Yeah, it's cool. It's interesting to me kind of what Ryan is thinking of, and it's great that he's on the stream watching, like in terms of 2.0 obviously has to be a big deal for him because he's been working on this forever. 1.0 has been out for as long as I remember, so at least probably 5 years by now.
5 to 7 years.
Yeah, 5 to 7 years. So it's interesting to see kind of like the set of features where he's like, these are the things that are going to be really important for 2.0. And then, could be years again before there's another big version.
Yeah. And especially because like these are things that he would have implemented like 4 years ago if he wasn't nerd sniped into building Solid Start.
Right. Yeah.
Which
I think it's so worth it. I mean, to me, if there was no Solid Start, then it would be very hard to make the case for me to tell anyone to use. It would be hard for me to tell anyone to use any framework that doesn't have a meta framework, just straight up. It just seems irresponsible.
Yeah. And I feel like that's going to happen very soon with MCP servers.
Word, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it is definitely a very big deal because, especially because a lot of the issues that we are trying to address with this, especially like getting rid of create effect, and like the problems that it causes in terms of not just like reactive graph, but also in terms of like mental model. Like I have written so much horrible code because I was using use effect in React as like a synchronization mechanism where some state updates, I do some calculation and update some other state, and that triggers another effect where that changes another state. I've written so much horrible logic like that. And I'm very happy that I get to do my part to remove that from the world.
Yeah, I mean, my number one reason I would tell people to use React frameworks back in the day was because all of them would figure out some way to wrap use effects so you're not really like there'd be some sort of framework, convention. Parasocial here saying, duh, just use Astro, which is unfortunately the exact opposite direction the stream is going.
Right. Cool.
Is there anything else for 2.0 you wanted to talk about?
We can talk maybe a bit about transitions, but I'll have to find the example for it. But basically, how much have you used transitions in React?
Not really at all.
Yeah, it's like a feature which is sometimes very hard to understand, honestly. Like it took a while for a lot of people to wrap their head around why transitions exist. It took me a lot of like watching Ryan streams to understand why transitions exist.
The docs says use transition as a React hook that lets you render a part of the UI in the background.
Yeah, that is a very accurate way to describe it, but I just don't know how
much. So accurate, it tells you literally nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Basic. Yeah. In React. So, if you are familiar with React's transitions, Solid 1.0 already currently has transitions that are very similar to that. The API almost looks like one-to-one. But a big problem with React's transitions is that if you start multiple transitions, they all kind of just get merged into a single transition. So a lot of people on React have, or like on Twitter, Blue Sky have recently been complaining that if you start if you click one button and you click a second button, everything gets frozen up, and then after a while you see all the updates together, which is kind of the feature of transitions, but it can be a little annoying when things just like keep merging together, like, and you have to just wait for everything to finish before anything on the screen.
It's like waterfall, essentially.
It's so the what.
Not literally, but
yeah, basically, yeah. For UI at least, yeah, it definitely feels like a waterfall. So the main difference with what we're doing with Solid 2.0 is that transitions that are independent can come on, like have their UI or like have their effects run independently. So if one transition updates one part of the page, another transition updates another part of the page, they don't need to merge with each other. They can just happen as they complete, which would not be the case with Solid today, where they would get merged anyways, even if they are fully independent. So that's kind of just the main feature there. It's more like removing a little annoyance in a lot of different cases. But it does. I'm hoping to see like if this might unlock some other things that people have not been doing with transitions just because they were merging. And some of the APIs around transitions and optimistic state are still being discussed.
Very cool. I'm just thinking now, because I had said something like this before the stream, like, new Ryan GPT features. Now that it's kind of, does a thing, and now I'm always, all the stuff I'm building, I'm always thinking of new things to do with them now, because it's just like, you can do anything. But having it give targeted advice for migrating to 2.0 could be a cool thing.
Yes, I am definitely planning on, like, so at the very least, one of the things we are going to have is a compatibility package. My migration guide that's definitely table stakes. But after that, like, there's going to be compatibility package, so you can continue, like, your 1.x apps will continue working.
Yeah, so as actually one thing I was going to ask, there'll be no literal breaking changes right away, it sounds like.
So there are breaking changes. For example, the signature of create effect looks very different. Or at least, it looks very different from the create effect of 1.0. It's a bit more complicated to use, honestly. But that's like for me, like in my head, that's fine because we're also removing a bunch of places where you might have to use it. So it's more likely that you're going to be migrating from create effect to a different API, like create async, create projection, create signal, whatever.
Yeah,
Then
that's about code mods.
yeah. So yeah, the compatibility package and the code mod is something I'm going to be looking more into. Honestly, I'm just super scared of anything that has to do with build plugins or like Vite plugins, compilers, bundlers, ASTs.
Would it still work
Yeah,
with Astro View transitions?
almost. I mean, I don't see why not. We might have like our own view transitions integration built in at some point, but yeah, no, still hope. I mean, yeah, still not fully clear how that's going to integrate within Astro itself, or sorry, within Solid itself. But yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't work with Astro view transitions.
Yeah, if it doesn't, that's probably more on the Astro team to figure out.
Right. I mean, yeah, probably like a joint thing.
Yeah.
Um,
That's honestly that question in itself is one of the reasons that's motivating my migration. Because just removing that question all has a solid thing interact with the Astro thing is a massive amount of overhead you get to get rid of.
mm-hmm.
You know. Word. Cool. So we should probably pull up.
Code mods. Yeah, sorry. Quick
Okay,
word on
go
code
ahead.
mods. They might happen depending on like if there are any migrations that are complicated enough to get code mods. What I'm more excited about is like just writing a migration guide that's detailed enough that I can point Claude to it and let it do the migration for me.
Totally.
That might like resolve a bunch of like maybe we don't need code mods for these.
Yeah, I really think that is a super good strategy because code mods can be very brittle and have weird edge cases, and then you're messing with people's code bases. Whereas giving the context and instructions so an LLM can do it, then it can just look at each file, write to your new file, make the update, and then you can kind of check it one by one.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Awesome. So I'm going to share my screen. We can check out. I alluded to it a bit. How I'm doing the form stuff. So let me pop this guy open. So we'll start in the store. So this is kind of what I was talking about, how there's like the big form state. So actually, sorry, I want to actually first just show you what the current app does.
Yeah, plug. It's your screen.
Yeah. So cool. So we got 3 different options: the local file, RSS feed, video URL. I've also got search now. So search for Ryan Carniato. You can find his videos. Let me find a short one. And then this is the only blocking step here. After this, it kind of all runs in the background. So you pick your transcription, and then you pick whatever prompts you want, and that just kind of runs in the background so people can kind of get to whatever they want to do, and they're not like waiting for each step to have to finish. And then once you get to the end, then it kind of tells you which step it's on, and it will run through it and then eventually redirect you. So the form state is essentially all of the things you're selecting as you're going through this. So you selected a transcription service, you selected a random number of prompts, you selected the LLM, and then the background things that are each running, each time those complete, is then also updating the state. So that includes things that need to eventually be saved to the show note object at the end, which is all being saved as a big R2 object that then is rendered in this page. And it has the metadata, which is the title, the date, length of time, the model you use, how many credits it cost, and then the actual content itself, and then the transcription that is associated with it. So if we look back at here, it first starts with this is all step one. You select what is the thing that you're actually doing. Is it a video? Is it an RSS? Or is it just a file? And then it does kind of the transcription stuff around here. And then it gets into the prompts and the LLM stuff around here. I had originally wanted this to be separated out so there'd be literally step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5 that breaks it up. But I'm somewhere in my vibe coding journey that got lost in the process. And then there's a ton more code in this file that I need to kind of refactor and separate out because there's basically all of the background stuff is here. So let me actually start by, let me collapse these. So there's everything that's happening in the background for the media processing, the transcription, and there's also like calculating the credit cost, things like that. So there's all of this crap happening here. And then the components themselves are then up in here. There's a directory for each specific step. So there's the process steps, and then there's each one. Actually, let me go to this first, a steps wrapper. I think this will be, yeah. So you see here, this is where you can kind of see how I originally had a whole bunch of crap that was happening in terms of signals for each step. And so there's a whole bunch of code here. This is all the crap that I want to remove. So that's just going through the store. And then it just kind of has these 5 steps that are then displayed. And then this, okay, that's the one I want. Yeah, that's the steps wrapper. So that's in the dashboard. And the steps wrapper wraps each individual step. And then each step is doing all of this management of the signal. And then this is also where the create effects are happening, because each step it's hitting one of the API routes, because we've got the backend has the kind of like, so you see how there's numbers for each step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those go with the API. Step 1 is select content. Step 2 is process transcription. Step 3 is select prompts. Step 4 is process LLMs. There should really be a step 5, which is like actually writing the result, but that's kind of all mixed up in the show notes and the session endpoints as well. So that's kind of the high level description of what is happening. So questions or comments from that?
This looks really cool. I mean, there's a few things that I noted, but yeah, we can get to them eventually. I mean, the first thing that I see here is error null is loading, which I'm excited that these fields will no longer need to be in any sort of state with 2.0.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Cool. Yeah. So what kind of issues are you running into with this?
So I think so. I'm currently not running into issues. It was more so that I was running into issues. So that I'll give you an example of something that I just couldn't understand why I was having this issue. I thought it should have been so much simpler. Was out of all the state management stuff, something that just for some reason at a certain point, broke, was that the prompt selection. So when you select a prompt, it does that. But what was happening is when I would click it, it wouldn't do anything. Like it would kind of light up and then it would go right back. So something was happening where it wasn't saving the state just for that one thing. And I would go back to the LLM, it would just get super confused. And then, and I think I know why. I think it was because I had what I originally said. I started with all these signals and then introduced a store, but without properly doing that where it would have looked how it should have been if I started from the store. So it was getting lost in the sauce somewhere and not realizing where the state was, how it was going from the signals to the store or back again. And so it just got super duper confused to the point where I had to go find additional SolidJS doc pages to share with it. So because also I think this is partly because it tends to still think sometimes that it's writing React, and it can get away with that sometimes, but not always. And I think this is an example where what was happening under the hood was different enough from React that it wasn't able to be like, I need to switch into SolidJS mode to handle this in a solid way. So that's how I felt giving it the doc pages. Then it could all of a sudden, and then I would tell it, write logs to track the state management in the console, and I would feed it back those logs. And eventually it kind of understood what the code it was writing was doing and figured it out.
Yeah.
So currently I worked through those kind of issues. I don't have any state management problems per se. My problem is, as I've been saying, that the code is just it's just really messy, and I need to refactor it so it's doing all of this just through the correct kind of store conventions that you would have. And there's this one page, complex state management, SolidJS. This is the one thing that I found helped the LLMs is you have a state management page and you have a complex state management. So I don't know if you've read this doc recently, but kind of curious, what exactly is it explaining that is not just explained in the store section? Do you know?
So can you put this one in the link? I
Yeah.
don't think I've read this one in a while.
Great.
We can, but yeah,
we can catch up on some comments here real quick.
Yep.
Love the new auto show. Looks amazing. Thanks, man. I spent a lot of time on the styling. A lot of love and care went into that. Just too fuzzy and Nikki T keep bouncing back from YouTube and Twitch for some reason. Okay, so let me go back to this page. So it talks about how you make changes to the store, how you add to an array.
Yeah, so the two major things that this kind of introduces are like stores and context, which like
I'm not using. I don't think I'm using create context in the app.
That's fine.
Sure. I'm not.
Yeah. You just have a global store.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just have a global store. Context is helpful if you want to do like some sort of dependency injection. So I mean, it works the same way as it does in React. Except that you use context doesn't cause a bunch of unnecessary re-renders because things are signals. But yeah, the main point is just that create store is a very nice utility to clump together a bunch of state into just an object. So you're not dealing with like calling functions to read data anymore. You're just using an object. And then the other one is that if you scroll down a bit, there's a produce, or if you just search for produce.
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, so it's just like the Immer version where you get like a mutable copy or like a proxy of the object, and then you just make mutations to it. So instead of using this path syntax, which like the first snippet in this screenshot is using, this is the path syntax, and the second one is produce. Produce is going to become the default in Solid 2.0. Currently, you have to use this produce helper to do it. But again, it makes it really easy to take like a giant piece of object and then just make mutations to it anywhere. And it also allows you to do a bunch of mutations together within a single function, so that you don't have to like wrap it with batch. So like there was a bunch of places where you had like 5 set form state calls one after the other, right? So you can combine all of them using this produce syntax. It's probably going to make it a bit easier to read that way.
Yeah, it's saying here something that I was actually kind of curious about. I was like, what is the difference between just doing produce versus set store?
Yeah. So just set store, you have to like give it a path. With produce, you just get an object and you can like navigate to whatever path you want. So like user.username and user.location in this example. Like one of the things I actually like about Solid is that it doesn't come with a lot of conventions around how to manage state, and on some level, like it doesn't need to, because what I've found working on React for so long is that a lot of conventions around state management exist not just to solve complexity, but to also make things more performant. Like you have to use selectors sometimes, you have to like filter things, or you have to use like additional APIs, you have to hoist things up into like global scope or like things like Redux, a lot of state management in React is like complexity and performance like combined together.
Right.
But with Solid, performance is not really a thing we need to worry about. That's like everything just works in the most optimal way by default, which also means that a lot of conventions that we have built or that we expect around state management, they don't actually need to exist anymore. So, and the only thing that you are left with is how you organize your code. That's all.
Yeah. And that is the thing that I really like about Solid. Cool, man. Okay, that's super useful. Looks like I got some more stuff. My fuzzy SolidJS secret is that I use it as a global store and import it as a module with all the state handlers being returned from it. Keeps everything simple.
Nice. Yeah, global store, state handlers being returned from it. Yeah, so that's like one of the ideal ways to use stores, where when you have like a something that's not just reusable, but it's like more complicated in terms of how you make changes to the state. A good way to abstract that is to like have a create form state or something like that, where you just return the read-only state. You don't return the setter. You only return like explicit functions that make changes to the store. So it kind of emulates the Redux reducer pattern, where you have to define all your mutations up front.
Yeah, that's what everyone hated about Redux, and that's that Redux toolkit I think was supposed to make that better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the overall like theme of the a lot of state management solutions in terms of like how they handle complexity is basically, it boils down to like controlling or like making the mutations upfront and well defined. Like if you have just a giant piece of state object and anywhere or like any component is allowed to make changes to it, that's how you run into unpredictability name mutations. Yeah. So if you don't have name mutations, if any object can make changes to your state from anywhere, this is kind of the problem.
It's a total mess.
Yeah, and that was like a big deal with Angular. And the thing that React kind of really brought over like existing solutions at the time, like Angular, was this like one-way data flow where you don't have anything making changes to any piece of state. You have this explicit setter that you have to pass to a child component or to a child hook to make changes to that state. So, and the things that Redux and Xstate and like MobX, Zustand, things that the things that they bring to the state management is name mutations. What Ryan is talking about, where you have to upfront decide how the state
it's like
is
define your API. Like I remember my boot camp. That's kind of how it was. Like you would have your backend endpoint, then you have your Redux mutations and things and whatever, and then you'd have just your React components that didn't do a whole lot because Redux was doing so much heavy lifting.
Exactly. Yeah. And this problem can honestly be traced back to like Java days as well, where you would like people writing Java would write a giant class with a bunch of properties, and they would have getters and setters for every single property.
I have a specific custom function or specific custom instruction to all my LLMs to tell them never to write a class.
Classes can get a little annoying sometimes. Svelte, it seems like it's really embracing them with runes, but so there might be coming back at least in some community, in some ecosystem. But yeah, it's the same problem where like you need to really name your mutations. You need to define what they're doing, why they're doing it, and that addresses like most of the complexity issues that you might run into.
And it makes sense to me as a previous GraphQL guy.
Exactly.
A lot of time thinking about mutations.
Yeah, exactly. And the final thing would be something I mentioned earlier, which is derive whatever you can, which also includes like getting rid of create effect. So for example, you were fetching some data inside a create effect, right? You never want to do that. That's why there's a built-in data fetching primitive called create resource that Solid comes with. So create resource is what you want to use if you are fetching some data in a component. You don't want to
be using create resource, not create effect, for all the times my backend is hitting my API routes. Or my front end is hitting my API routes. Yeah.
Yes, every single time it should be using create resource.
That's important.
And
that's really important for me now.
Yeah, and then eventually you would be using create async for actually if you're using solid start or solid router, actually it ships with an API that looks very similar to, it's called create async. It looks very, very similar to the create async we have for 2.0, except that it's not non-nullable, so it still returns like data or undefined. It doesn't just return the data type like it does in 2.0. It's like just a wraparound create resource. So yeah, you want to be using that API because similar to TanStack query, it takes care of a lot of stuff internally like cancellation for you. And the second thing is that again, it makes the data flow more derived, so you don't have like this create effect problem. Again, you want to get rid of the setters and the effects as much as you can, and that's where you want to derive as much as you can. And then obviously the last thing is that's how Suspense works. If you're fetching in the create effect, you don't get the benefits of Suspense. If you're using create resource, then you get these capabilities like Suspense and transitions and the new is pending helper, things like that.
Awesome. Before we transition to the next thing, did you said you were taking some notes, I think. Did you have other thoughts or specific things about how my store or stuff was set up?
I would like to see like if how you're doing validation, form validation.
That's a great question. I think it's more so that most that's happening on the back end. I think like it kind of like, there's a search input or something, and I don't really do any front end validation right now. There's some things I could do where I could validate whether they're giving like a correct URL or something, but that currently is not too big of an issue because a lot of what's happening is just toggling, because they're selecting things like they're selecting a model or they're selecting a prompt or they're selecting an LLM. The only actual inputs is when they're searching for a video or RSS feed, or if they're putting in a URL. If they go through the file picker, there's no input typing at all. So that hasn't been a huge issue in terms of the validation, but there's definitely a couple places where I do need to add that.
Okay. So not a lot of front-end validation. That's fine. I think Ryan himself also prefers like doing most validation on the server just because schema libraries tend to be pretty heavy on the bundle size. I think Valgeo kind of fixes that. It's like one of the first schema.
What's it called?
Is it Valgeo?
Valdito, I think.
Or is that the state management one? Valibot, sorry.
Valibot, yes. Okay, Valibot versus Zod. Yeah, that has to be it. Yes. Yeah, this is Nikki T was having this guy on a stream, I think, just the other day.
Yeah, the Valibot maintainer is doing some cool stuff with Solid as well. Yeah, so that would be a cool one to actually like be able to use on the front end without like hanging.
So is it good enough to use instead of Zod? Because I know Zod is just massive.
Yeah, I think it is. I haven't. I don't remember exactly what the bundle size was.
I remember people talking about it over a year ago, so it should be pretty solid by now.
Yeah, I think the main thing was that it's built ground up to take full advantage of tree shaking. So you're only going like the less of the library you use, the smaller your bundle ends up being, basically.
Wow,
Schema
cool. Actually, I want to show this real quick. So this is the introduction to Valbot, where he says, "My friend Fabian created me as part of his bachelor." This is like Valbot talking about himself. Created as part of his bachelor thesis, supervised by Walter Kria, Mishko Hevery, and Ryan Carniato. I had no idea that those guys were like supervising theses and stuff. That is an incredible panel. So I could see why this would have. And then his role model was Colin McDonald, the creator of Zod. No, this is sweet. I need to get him on actually the stream. Yeah,
Valbo would be a fun stream to have. So I think it's the thing that I'm interested in seeing with the form management is how like form validation and things like that happen on the front end. Resist nihil before Zod.
Do you get this joke?
Yeah, nihil before
Yeah.
Zod.
Yeah, from Superman. Really funny.
Man of Steel, yeah.
Well, it's from I think Superman 2 was like the first like reference when people would used to, because I remember in like a Jay and Silent Bob film, it was like kneel before Zod. And when I was a kid, I was like, what is he talking about? Because I had never seen the old Superman, you know?
Right. Yeah, I still haven't. I started watching. I mean, I've seen some of the new animated stuff, and obviously all the DCEU things. But
bro, I haven't watched a comic book movie in like 3 years. I'm done.
I understand that, but you need to watch the new Thunderbolts movie. It's actually really good.
Sorry, what was it?
You need to watch the new Thunderbolts movie. It's actually really good.
Is that the dogs?
No. It's the new Marvel movie. It's like they're like a new version of the Avengers, basically.
Oh yeah, it was more like Suicide Squad, where they're like grittier.
Yeah,
that's the
but
cover.
Yeah, but it's actually a really good movie.
Yeah, okay. Let's check it out.
I was at a conference in Columbus, Star Trek. So their thing is that they do the entire conference inside a movie theater. Or
see, here's the issue, though. It says here it's one of the lowest grossing MCU films.
Yeah,
the audience for these things are stupid.
Yeah, I mean, people are just like super tired of like superhero stuff, honestly. And this movie Marvel probably didn't think this movie would turn out good, so they didn't put as much investment into it. But yeah, it's a pretty good movie. It's not like Avengers, like the first Avengers. It's not close to that, but it's pretty good.
It's okay, that movie already exists. It's like Fuzzy says, you just redeemed yourself. Cool. I'm gonna use the bathroom real quick, but I want to tee you up on a topic first. I want to just kind of give you a chance to give like very, very general advice if you were like, being a consultant or like talking to someone and giving general advice about like, how do you think about a large, complex, solid app? What should be top of mind when you're like architecting it and building it? Like we've talked about a million things already on this stream. So maybe like really high level, like what are like the top 3 things that's like, you don't want to skip these 3 things,
Yeah. That is a good point to bring up. I think anytime you're working on any kind of large system, there's there's the accidental complexity and the essential complexity, which people often talk about. The essential complexity is like the complexity that comes from just the domain you're working on. So constraints, affordances, and state. Yeah, that's also a good way to like categorize a bunch of stuff that you might run into. But yeah, essential complexity, for example, if you have a to-do list versus a very complicated form with a bunch of validation, dynamic fields, or something something similar to what Anthony was showing earlier, that's just an inherently complex thing, and that will require a good chunk of thinking in terms of like how you organize your code, how you keep the complex things like separate from each other, so you can work on them separately, and you don't accidentally break things when you make changes to one part. And accidental complexity comes in when you try to apply the solution you have in your head using the tools that you have. So one example is just like dependency arrays in React. That using dependency arrays is not something inherent to the thing you're building. It's something you have to do because you're working with React. That's kind of how it is. Same thing with like what I was showing earlier with data fetching and suspense and error boundaries. Like if you have some components that fetch data, that's fine. You can just use whatever data fetching library you have. But now, because of the way that React works, there's this accidental complexity in terms of where do you place the suspense boundary, or what do you put in the dependency arrays, or where do you put your use state and use context so that it doesn't re-render often. So for example, if you have a very complicated piece of app all stuffed inside one giant component in React, that's the worst way of doing that in React, because whenever you use state in a React component, that entire component now needs to re-render. And if you have all the logic inside one giant component, then every single update will make that entire component re-render and reconcile again, which means the way that you have to break up your code into pieces, that's no longer just like an essential complexity thing. That's an accidental complexity thing, because now you're worrying more about the tool than you are about your problem. So I think the thing that I pay attention to the most is if there is any piece of complexity that's showing up in my apps, is it because of the thing that I'm working on is complicated, or is it the tool causing those complexities in itself? So that this has helped me simplify a lot of things, because just the way that the APIs are designed in Solid, like some of the stuff that I showed, and then some Solid Start stuff like the cache query helpers and the server functions, they get rid of a lot of complexity around like API routes. So right now, Anthony, you're using API routes for fetching, but once this moves to Solid Start, you can move a lot of that logic to server functions, and that's going to eliminate a lot of additional code that you have to write.
Totally. Yeah.
And especially if you're using the query and action helpers that come from.
Yeah, I was just about to ask about the actions. Yeah, because that's
exactly.
what it was before. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, these are APIs that, to me, are very well designed to like eliminate additional like accidental complexity that I don't really get from a lot of other frameworks. SvelteKit recently realized all of this, and it has like introduced like a way asynchronous Svelte and then remote functions to basically look very similar to Solid Start. And I'm happy to see this like more frameworks adopting it. React Server Components was
always got to rip off the best.
Exactly, yeah. React Server Components was one of the first places where I really like saw the full extent of this, where how much of accidental complexity can be removed if you design your APIs right. But again, RSC's introduced a bunch of them as well, so kind of negated.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, I used to be the biggest Svelte fanboy. I was super into Svelte before I was into things like Solid and other stuff, and just kind of slowly used it less and less and got away from it. And I feel like it always had a very like dedicated small community, and it's one of the things I liked about it, but also I feel like was slightly drawback about it. So I haven't used SvelteKit in a while, but I remember, and you can take this to the bank, I wrote the first ever SvelteKit tutorial because I wrote it the day it came out. I sat down and I wrote a tutorial and I published it. And I know for a fact no one else did that day. So that's my one claim to fame when it comes to SvelteKit.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And so SvelteKit used to have this like data page data thing where you have to fetch all your data in route loaders, which obviously it got from Remix, and Solid Start had that for a while as well, which we got from Remix. But
so is that not a thing anymore?
Yeah, so I mean
I get to miss that entire era of web dev then, because I never even used Remix much, and by the time Svelte had it, I wasn't using Svelte anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. Route loaders for me is another one of those things where you have to fetch data on the route level. You cannot fetch
I will say it was sick for GraphQL. I think I remember that was like the thing that made it awesome.
Yeah. So it actually works really well with GraphQL because you have fragments, and fragments are really nice to like have a bunch of like distributed places where like, okay, now here I need this data, here I need this data, and then have something like Relay just like bundle it all up for you, right? But for us muggles that don't get to use GraphQL, we if we want the same like performance characteristics, we are either like forced to like manually kind of like write those route loaders, or the new paradigm, which Solid Start kind of pioneered, and then Thanstack Start made a very similar thing. SolidKit is almost certainly going to do very similar things as well, which is just fetch in your components. That's fine. And you still have your route loaders to preload, but all they're going to do is to like preload data into your cache. But the way you get the data into your components is still going to be create async, create resource, whatever you or like use query, use suspense query in case of React. So we're not going to move data fetching up there. We're just going to do preloading, and it keeps the co-location benefits where your component decides exactly what data it needs. That doesn't need to be split across two different modules.
Is there a difference between preloading and prefetching?
Not really.
Yeah, just want to make sure the terminology there. Because I do, because I don't know what prefetching is, so that's good. Yeah, there's some stuff where once I get to higher level performance stuff, where I'll probably want to like code split each step, so that way like they get like a really snappy instant thing where the dashboard kind of first comes up, because the whole dashboard I think loads kind of all at the beginning, and so that's some places where I could kind of make things more granular.
Yeah, yep, definitely. And pretty much every framework these days will give you automatic code splitting for different routes. And if you have like more complicated layouts, then you can use like nested routes, which again, it was kind of React routers or Remix's big innovation that everyone else after them adopted. But yeah, nested routes is a really powerful way to.
Redwood had nested routes forever.
Yeah, I mean, it was built on top of React router, right?
Redwood, no. Redwood has still had a custom router built for, inspired by Rails, taking some room from React router, but they specifically did not want to use React router because it couldn't do all the things the Rails router did. So obviously it was unusable.
Right. Oh, Ember
router was the
nested routing also goes back to Ember
router. So the Ember router thing that filtered into React router is then what was combined with the Rails influence to create the Redwood router, which is why the Redwood router ended up being freaking sick and amazing and did so many things no one had any idea because no one ever used the framework. And then for like years I saw all these new features being added over and over again, and I was like, you guys didn't have that already? What are you even doing?
Honestly, Redwood these days looks a lot more appealing because of AI. Having like Prisma's type safety, GraphQL's like a language and storybook to like test your components. It's actually it feels like a really nice thing for AI to play with, because
I was able to vibe code iteration of auto show with when I did the Redwood stream with Peter that it worked on the first shot, which I was like, this never works on the first shot with new frameworks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're hoping to fix that.
Totally. Yeah.
But yeah, complex apps, just try to notice when you're getting into accidental complexity and not essential complexity.
Can we make that more prescriptive? Like, what is the situation where that would happen, and what would you do to ensure that?
Yeah. So I mean, fetching data is one example where frameworks now have like RPC mechanisms. So Next has server actions, Solid Start has server functions, SwellKit now has remote functions. So taking advantage of these abstractions instead of writing fetch calls and doing like JSON parse, JSON stringify, things like that, those are super helpful to eliminate, because I've written so much code that is just wrapping over fetch to like make things more type safe and hide some complexity things. All those things are now built into the framework. So take advantage of framework primitives like server functions, things like that. When it comes to state management, again, like things that we went over.
We covered that topic pretty well, I think. Yeah. So we
exactly
hit on that a ton. Yeah.
Yeah, those things like use stores, derive what you can. What are some other things? There's some stuff around like streaming and WebSockets that I'm working on. Component boundaries is an interesting one, because a lot of people get hung up on how big or small should my components be? How should I organize my files within my project? So those are like, it's
very taste based.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, I'm entirely driven by what is going to be best for the LLM, because when they get too long, they get confused, and then the responses take really long. So I have to write this whole new file each time in terms of my workflow. So I'm always kind of aiming between 1 and 200 lines of code for my components.
Yeah, exactly. So like whatever just feels right. I think Dan Abramov has this really funny website where it's called like how to organize your React components or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just a blank page that says however you feel like, or something like that. I forget what it actually is.
That's really funny. Something. Oh, my problem with leveraging any of the aforementioned framework RPC methods is with the deployment providers and how it works in prod. The drift between environments just to, hey, Fuzzy, I got your solution for you. Run that shit in a Docker container. I have my thing has been containerized the entire time. I never tried to like get this like Astro API thing working on like Netlify or Vercel or something, because it would be an absolute nightmare. Very challenging.
I mean, honestly, I would want to hear more about like what the deployment provider's issue is, because I feel like the thing is server functions just compile down to regular API routes. So
the problem is they compile down to lambdas when most people want a node server. That's the inherent issue with these always, I think.
They don't compile to lambdas. They just compile to JavaScript functions, and they run wherever you deploy them. So
they run on lambdas.
I mean, if you then the API functions, the API server that you have right now, the API endpoints, they would also run on lambdas. So it's not
now they do for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. So
weird shit still happens every now and then.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that where the server logic runs is an entirely different concern from how you write them. So whether you're using API endpoints like you are right now,
I think what Fuzzy is saying, though, is you can take out the question at all of even worrying about where it runs. I think it's kind of what he's trying to get at.
Can you say that again?
Because you're saying there's a separate thing between the complication of the thing itself versus the complication of how it's running, right? So I think what Fuzzy is saying here is that he doesn't want to have to think about the issue of how it's running at all, which is that level of complexity that is added by using the deployment providers that he's probably talking about. Okay. Fuzzy, you should expand on what you mean here, because I'm kind of just trying to guess based on your first response.
Yeah, I mean, if you have any server logic anywhere, you would have to worry about where it's running. Like you would have to worry about where your server logic is running, even if you have API endpoints like you have in AutoShow right now.
Fuzzy sounds spot on. Yeah, and that's why I like just having it run in a Docker container, because then it's basically just like running a node server. Yes. Whereas if you are trying to do one versus the other, if you're doing it in a Netlify function, it'll be different from a Vercel function. Yeah. So that is a layer of complexity because they're different. So there's something there that you need to know and understand, because the code will not work on both of them if you just write them, unless you write them highly specifically to work on both of them, which is like then a whole different level of trying to make it agnostic. And then you add Cloudflare workers, and then there's even more things to think about.
Yeah, and that's definitely an issue, and Nitro exists to solve exactly that issue, which is I need to charge my laptop or it's gonna die. Give me a second.
Yeah, do your thing. Yeah, Nitro. I'll share my screen, and because I remember when this first came out, I was like, this looks sick. Deploy anywhere, deployment providers. The default production output preset is a Node.js server. That's all I need to hear. Done. You can run it on Amplify, Deep Cut, Old School, Azure, Cloudflare, Firebase. Don't ever do that. Netlify, Vercel, and two I have never even heard of. StormKit. The hell is StormKit and Ziabur? Self-hosted Vercel and Netlify alternative. I'm intrigued. Interesting. No vendor lock-in. Bold claim. And then what is Ziabur, the DevOps AI agent for Vibe coders? That's a pretty good headline.
Yeah.
Funny.
But yeah, so How familiar are you with Nitro?
Providers just need to integrate better in dev. Yeah, this can be handled at the Vite level. Yeah, Vite does solve a lot of this. So Nitro it was first created as like the server layer essentially to Nuxt, and has been now made agnostic. H was the real thing it was based on, and I know Nitro has been the foundation for Solid Start, I think, if not since the beginning, for a very, very long time. And yeah, no, it's super sweet. Big fan, Dev Sir.
Nice to see you here. Yeah, I've seen you on Twitter a bunch. Like the swell in the last name.
So why is Nitro cool to you?
So I mean the exact issue that we were just talking about, where the same code doesn't work on every deployment platform. You have to write different code for it.
It also looks like gets into the differences between Bun and Dino and Node.
Yeah. Exactly. So Nitro and I think the other one these days is Hono, which is just a web server. It doesn't have all the features of Nitro.
I was very close to using Hono actually for auto show at a certain point.
Yeah.
So basically they handle everything, whether it's on Edge or a Lambda, whether it's a different runtime, they've thought of everything, it looks like.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, because the idea of Nuxt was that it should be deployable everywhere, and then the Nuxt community is just like so nice that they want to open or make every single thing framework agnostic, which
I might start just running my Node server just as a Node server, not in Docker, because this might make this super duper easy to do.
Yeah, where do you have it deployed?
Railway.
Railway, okay.
Yeah.
So wait, are you running Docker inside Railway?
I mean, that's like one of the main things Railway does. It runs containers.
Right. I mean, like, yeah.
Because the main thing is FFmpeg. I need to use YTDLP. I need to use FFmpeg. I need to use these more like CLI-like things that really need to be able to run on like a Linux server, a Linux environment. You don't want to run FFmpeg in a Lambda. Like, you can do it, but you don't want to.
Yeah, makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
That Railway makes a lot of sense.
Media Bunny though looks like something that might change my life. This is the like FFmpeg competitor, where it apparently does stuff in the browser super duper fast. This will reduce like the only real latency left in my app, so I'm excited to try this.
Nice.
What were you just saying?
Yeah, Nitro is super cool to me because it just addresses that platform mismatch issue. It got super cool to me when they added WebSocket support. So now I can like deploy a WebSocket, or I can write WebSocket.
This is hilarious. They support Edgeo. No, actually, this is deprecated. Be removed. This company went under. So a bunch of not gonna finish that sentence. Like control. They have way more than I thought. Actually, they might. This is even more than I think Astro supports. Astro always had the longest list of. It had like 20 things you could deploy to, but they don't have a Railway one. I guess I'll have to write that one for them.
I mean, it would just be the standard node.
It would be most similar to Render, or if they have a Fly one. They don't have a Fly one, so it would probably be somewhat similar. They had their whole infros code, so not really, but yeah, cool.
Yeah, so Nitro is like Solid Start is built on top of it. TanStack Start is also currently built on top of it. Analog is obviously built on top of it. Nuxt is as well. And now that Vite Environment API is here, there's a better chance that you might not need Nitro for this. So, for example, if you're using Cloudflare, then Cloudflare should have its own Vite plugin that gives you both the dev experience that with Miniflare and everything, and it handles all the bundling and deployment to Cloudflare workers without requiring like a layer like Nitro in between. But then Cloudflare has to do the work of building that Vite plugin or any other platform. Yeah, and the other nice thing about Nitro is that it just comes with a lot of caching and database persistent stuff.
What database are you using these days?
I am so for one of my projects, I'm using Convex. It's
That's
just
right.
really
I
cool.
knew that.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm currently also using something called Current, or it used to be called Event Store DB. It's more like yeah, it's Current with a K, but that's
Of course.
Current. So this is
I
more
don't think
like,
I've ever heard of this.
yeah, it's not a super popular one, but it's built like from ground up for event sourcing. So event sourcing
Would
is
you use this with like Kafka? I don't know anything about this stuff.
yeah, I mean you could use this with Kafka. You don't necessarily if you have something like if there's a use case for it, but
This
the main
looks so
point is
enterprise. It's funny.
it is very much,
Just
yeah,
the way the page looks, you know.
yeah, it very much is.
That's cool though.
Like, almost reminds me of like MongoDB docs back in 2017, 18.
Data engineers can provide context-rich events from current to data pipelines to analyze historical and behavioral trends, uncovering patterns that traditional databases often miss. Interesting.
So actually, the way I'm using Convex is all like I'm basically treating it as current, where instead of like using their documents or relationships, it's convex.dev.
Dev.
Yeah. So instead of using like
I'm like 90% of the way towards choosing Convex. The only thing that I'm hesitating is I also want to run my database in Railway. I think that would be nice, but I think if Convex is just going to give me a nice experience to find my database anyway. So where do you host your database though?
You can run Convex on Railway.
Okay. I'm sure you can. Where are you running it though?
No, I'm just using their cloud platform.
So they also they will host your database for you as well.
Yeah, and Convex started out as like more of a Firebase alternative, very much like Superbase.
Right. Yeah.
And
I remember that.
Yeah, they recently open sourced at least like the single deployable hosted version, so that you can run it wherever you want. There's probably some.
So this is the only thing that I need to know. What is the database underneath?
It's MySQL. I think it's either MySQL or Postgres, probably both, or like it can use both.
Yeah.
They recently switched their cloud platform to use PlanetScale under the hood, and it's been
then it has to be MySQL then if it's PlanetScale.
And PlanetScale now also does. Yeah, it's definitely.
Do they do Postgres now?
They do Postgres now, yes.
Of course they do. That shows you how long I've been out of the game.
Yeah. So they use MySQL under the hood.
Oh, they do. Okay, they do file storage too.
Yeah, it's like it's not just a database. It's basically a backend platform. So you can do file storage. You can do.
Can it host my Docker container? Then is the only question left.
No, it cannot do that.
So then that makes me almost still just want to run everything on Railway because Railway is about to add file storage.
Nice. Yeah. And you can put Convex in there as well. The other database that I've been using recently is LiveStore, which so LiveStore is built by the original author of Prisma.
I've heard. Yeah, I know about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So
this is also. I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, this is also an event source database. So in that category, it's like.
I think actually Peter is sponsoring this for Redwood.
He is, yes. Yeah. I think we are probably going to talk more about LiveStore when Peter comes on.
Yes.
It's like a database and a sync engine.
Yeah, I can see why that would be appealing to you.
Yeah, no, I love LiveStore.
It's a very complicated front page, but it's tight.
Yeah, it has a long way to go. There's a lot of like basic like missing features, just like authorization, and it doesn't have like a simple adapter.
I like this actually. What it doesn't do is right here on the front page. That's great.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, I'm super excited about LiveStore.
We should get you in these what others are saying section. There's Peter.
A creator of LiveStore.
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to use this, but I might use Convex. I'm thinking real hard about it, especially if I can just do this. This is probably the move right here.
And the one that I really want to use is Zero's.
What was it?
Zero sync.
Zero sync.
Yeah, Zero with Postgres. So this is from the guys who made Replicache.
Yeah, I
This is
heard
like
it. Is this the Zero framework? It's the same thing.
the sync engine.
Okay.
It's not Zero is not a framework. It's
Okay. There's a React framework called Zero that just came out, right?
a React framework. No, there's a React framework called One
One.
that just came out, and
That's
it
right.
uses Zero. So it's
You
built
gotta be kidding me.
it's built on top of Zero, and the creator of One and the creator of Zero like live across the street from each other or something.
Okay, so that's very good that I then confuse them for each other. Shows I'm basically there.
Yeah. Yeah, One is basically like Zero plus Tamagui.
Gotcha.
Which means like you write your code once and it has the same UI on both for mobile, like React Native and React Web.
Docker first, I like that.
Yes, that. Zero is Docker first, so this also runs pretty well on Railway. It works on top of a
SST guide as well. Fly guide. To see if they have a Railway guide. No, they don't.
There is a Solid guide though. That this did ship with React and Solid adapters since 1.0. Or not, it's alpha, not 1.0, but yeah.
You're tempting me with so much new tech dev.
Yeah.
This is cool though.
Yeah.
I gotta save all these links real quick. Let's go. Let's see which ones are important. Now we need the Nitro one for sure. So you're mostly Convex is still sounds like the thing that you're really hyped on in terms of backend database things.
Honestly, like I'm not super sold on any one solution just as of yet. Sure. It's like everything has like things that I like about it.
Yeah.
So what I like about Convex is that the data and the backend are basically co-located. Obviously, reactive queries is very nice as well, but that's no longer like Convex's only thing. The thing that I don't like about Convex is that I need to do all my queries on the server, so it's a lot harder to do, like where I just want to preload all my data on the client side, and then I want to do filtering and sorting everything on the client.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that's more complicated with Convex because Convex queries run on the server. I can do this with Zero and LiveStore, both of them, but I like I like event sourcing more, so I prefer LiveStore. But then LiveStore doesn't have all the same querying and especially the incremental queries feature that Zero has. So I like that more about Zero, but Zero isn't event source. So there's like things that I like and dislike about each solution.
Yeah. Sounds like there's a startup waiting to be built by Mr. Dev right here.
I mean, I would be the only person who uses this, whatever product I end up building. So yeah, there's definitely something that needs to be built here. That's, at least for me, like it fits, it checks all the boxes.
Fuzzy, I don't need to know anything about how anything will ever work on Azure. Don't worry. None of my concern, thankfully. I will never run anything on Azure. Like, it's so ridiculous. I understand what lots of people do because they work at a company where they're not allowed not to. And he says you can use Postgres with PG client and get the client sync up, and Postgres for the win. Yeah,
Nitro and Azure. I think it's that Azure very recently added streaming support, but the Nitro adapter hasn't been updated to use the new streaming Azure Functions API. Sure. Because probably no one uses it and no one cares enough. The only reason I know this is because I was trying to deploy Solid Start app to Azure at some point. Electric SQL is also very nice.
Yeah, I remember trying to get Redwood working on Azure was by far the most complicated, and
yes,
it's like almost wouldn't have gotten done unless one dude who worked for a specific company and just absolutely had to have it. Didn't build it. He built it for himself. So that's the only reason why it ended up even getting made at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we haven't gotten much to talk about AI. Sure. I'm guessing you have been using AI a decent bit when writing AutoShow.
Yeah, I mean, 90 to 95% of the code I write is with AI. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'm sure Ryan would love to hear that metric. But so yeah, you mentioned a little bit ago, like it was having trouble with like signals and stores, and you had to eventually you had to point it to some docs, and then it was working
Mhm.
relatively well.
Yeah, then I was able to get, and partly, I have a lot of experience now with how to prompt it. And so the main thing is when it's messing up something over and over again, you have to specifically tell it, hey, whatever you're changing, whatever you're trying to do, add a logging statement to see if the thing is coming out that you're expecting to come out. And
Mm,
then it gets more information, you feed that then back into it, and then it actually can tell whether the code it's writing is doing the thing it thinks is doing. So that's like the most important thing right there. But if it
mhm,
still keeps messing up, then it means they're trying to do something that doesn't make sense because they don't have the contextual knowledge of the tool to know how the tool is actually going to behave when you give it whatever
mhm.
code you're going to give it. So I
Yeah.
found that I was just like, okay, it's messing up state. Where are all the state docs on Solid? And I feed it to that. So then it has that extra kind of context. I do this with lots of tools. If it can't
Mhm.
do it the first time, I go grab the README. I give it the README. That usually helps fix the issue.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know if you have seen this blog post yet or any of the recent Angular announcements. So they did like a whole live stream on Angular plus AI.
Interesting.
Uh, so they and one of the things that they have in there is a new tool that they have built called Web Code Coder,
Huh.
which basically tests the
Right.
ability of yeah, this basically tests the ability of AI, specifically Gemini right now, but it works with any model. It tests their ability to basically build applications with any framework. Right now, there's only Angular and Solid in there, but
Wow, that's cool.
they came up with a Solid example. They shared an early version with us, with we experimented with as well.
This
Um,
is great. I love this.
yeah, yeah. So this for them, this has been very helpful to come up with uh, like a system prompt that you would put in agents.md or claude.md, and it would like write better, good, and up to date Angular code once you do that. They also have an MCP server, but apparently they also like use this to like get feedback on some of their API designs and documentation as well, um,
Uh-huh.
and like improve their docs and APIs in using like this tool and how well
Oh,
Gemini
were you the one who
performs.
was sharing a screenshot of this score for
Yes,
Solid? Okay.
yes.
Now I
So
understand what's
that's what
happening.
I shared the screenshot from.
Okay, and that's so cool because that intuitively makes sense to me because for the most part, aside from the one issue I was explaining, it was LLMs were very good at writing Solid.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't have to do much to honestly get. So the initial version that they had when they shared it with us, it had a score of like 40 in somewhere in the 40s or 50s.
Uh-huh.
So it wasn't doing great, and we
So
realized,
you explained what these different things are. So
yeah,
it's measuring build, runtime,
mhm,
security, accessibility. So it's kind of like a lighthouse almost.
kind of, yeah. So it's basically, so there's the environment prompts, which is like what framework you're using, and then there's the
Mm-hmm.
example prompts, which is what app you're building. So it's
Mm-hmm.
going to take these two things, it's going to give them to Gemini, GPT, Claude, whatever, and then it's going to come back with like code that then this tool puts in a folder, installs dependencies around it, and then tries to run it in a browser. Um, First, it sees if it builds or not, and then once it builds, it tries to open it up in the browser, sees if it runs in the browser or not, does some like basic accessibility and
That's huge,
performance
honestly,
testing.
because that's one of the biggest problems with the LLMs is that they never run the code, so they have no idea really what happens after
Mhm.
they hand over the code.
Yeah, there's a lot of like workflows that I've seen recently where people either use the Playwright MCP or they have Claude write a Playwright script.
I've actually gotten pretty deep into Playwright recently because I'm really
Nice.
enjoying using it for automation stuff because I'm, doing all this LLM stuff now. So I'm creating like Playwright scripts that will generate like screenshots of different parts of the app with different aspect ratios, and then I get back to the LLM
Mhm.
so we can give it like a mobile style versus a desktop style, like all sorts of just little things like that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really helpful for that. I had like Claude generate a pretty big like Playwright script for me to scrape some data. I haven't yet used it to like write tests or things like this, but I'm hoping to like find some time to invest into that, because that's definitely a big way to get additional feedback into these agents.
Yeah, which is feedback specifically that's very hard to get it to have.
Yes, yeah.
So this would be very cool that I need to add this. I actually put out my first NPM package, init AI. I built this just for myself because I started creating this like big ass script that initialized a project with all the things I like to have for my own thing. So like repo mix is the main one, but it also comes with like an agent that can review like your code diffs, and it just kind of sets you up with like a good structure so that you can regenerate your stuff really quickly. So I had just built this myself, and I was like, I should just publish this, and I saw the namespace was open. I'm like, that's a sick name.
Yeah, that's like the NPM AI billboard that Vercel had in San Francisco.
Totally,
yeah, it's pretty cute. Repo mix, I don't think I've heard of this. I should look more into this.
Yeah, so repo mix is how I'm able to entirely avoid using Cursor or Claude Code or Open Code. And it's not necessarily that it's a one-to-one replacement, but it's more so that it's such an integral part of my own workflow that I now have this way of basically repo mix allows you to grab specific code files and mash them together and then add custom instructions and then any other contextual information you want to give. So you can go to any LLM, start a conversation, and immediately give it exactly what it needs to know for the feature you want to write with the code style you want to write, and it'll respond the way you want it to respond, because I tell it exactly how to respond in terms of how it writes the code, whether it gives me a full code file or not a whole code file, and things like that. So it's just a way that I've been able to iteratively build up all of my own preferences in terms of using an AI into a specific CLI tool that I can script around to have a really fast iteration. So I basically, the way I do anything is I start by running a repo mix command with a couple flags that select the part of the code base that I needed to know about, kind of like how in Cursor you can select different files to add to your context, but it's like a supercharged way of doing that. And then I just write out in like a sentence or two the thing I wanted to do, and I just copy paste that in, and then it gives me, the output, and I just, copy those into my project, and then that's it. That's the whole process.
Nice. So you use repo mix to like go to like ChatGPT or Claude and give them context about your code base.
Yeah, so you can always just one shot something and immediately get a response that is going to actually work.
Nice. Is that like a how much, like how different is that? I mean, obviously it's very different, but like how is that work? Like have you found that workflow more productive or better than like just using Claude Code?
I do, because I feel like I have more control, and I can be, because then it's only going to take the length of time it takes for it to write the things. It's not searching around your project. It's not trying to pull in the context it needs. So I've found that I have dialed it in to be much, much faster. Your mileage may vary with this, because if you're asking it to do a ton of stuff, needs to write you 10 code files that are all 100 lines, then obviously that's not going to be fast. But I found that I really like the iterative approach. It also allows me to have going back to having multiple conversations running at once. Sometimes like I've got my auto show CLI and I've got the auto show app. Sometimes I'm just popping back and forth. Like I create a repo mix thing with my instruction, I hand it to one, and then as that's running, I go to the other one and I do that. And then by the time I'm done starting that next prompt, I go back to the other one. The response has been written. I copy those into so I'm kind of bouncing back and forth between two things that I'm always building simultaneously. So I'm never waiting for one thing to write the code while I'm just sitting around, And that I'm pretty sure you can't do with Cursor, because Cursor is always going to be just doing one thing. It'll have a background agent, but I don't think you could have two background agents working on two parts of your code base at the same time,
Yeah. These days what I do is I
have tests in my project, so this is incorrect.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what he's trying to say, it's more like when an agent writes the code, it immediately runs the test or sees LSP errors and is able to immediately go back and address any issues with it, instead of versus if you're running tests separately, you now have to copy paste those test results back into the AI, right?
Yeah, and that's usually that's not an issue because it's usually going to get right on the first shot if I give it the proper context.
Right.
And if not, then there'll be one quick back and forth. And I'm using warp, so I click the thing, hit copy paste, and I have the entire error message just right there. So that's not too big of an issue. And you say you can open 2 cursor windows. So yeah, there you
go. So what I do these days is I have like at least 2 open code windows tabs open. So I can do like 2 separate things. If I'm waiting on one, I'll just switch to another. I'll just start doing something else. You actually don't even need to have like 2 separate terminal windows, because you can just switch to a different session within the same window and the other one keeps running. I just prefer to have different separate tabs open. And yeah, I have wanted to look more into Git work trees to enable this basically like to have 2 different agents working on 2 separate parts of the code base at the same time. So work trees is a really nice feature. It fits really nicely with like Cloud Code and Open Code and like these coding agents, because you can have multiple versions of your repository where you're working on different things, and then at the end you somehow merge them in. You can also get a little messy, and I've never used work trees, so it's going to be something new to learn. But that's at least I think what my approach is going to be like.
It's like it's literally one command. Yeah, it's a Git command though. So.
Yeah, it's more like building a workflow around.
Not the same.
Yeah, building a workflow around using work trees with Open Code. Hollywood CLI.
I've never heard of that.
Wow. Git work tree outcome. Yeah, I mean, using Git is never that simple. You always think Git is simple, but
at this point, Warp writes my Git for me, thankfully. So that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. Have you seen Zed's recent announcement about like how they're gonna build something to replace Git? Or I mean, it'll be on top of Git.
Zed, the editor?
Yeah.
No, I hadn't heard that.
So they're working on DeltaDB, which is basically like a more elaborate source code management system, and which is like basically designed for collaboration with AI very much.
Yeah, I mean, Zed wasn't going to get me to move off of VS Code, so the idea that they would get me to move off of Git is like even less likely. Props to them for trying, though.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it because I don't think the current tools are, or I don't think Git is good enough for things like this.
At this point, though, everyone just knows how to use Git. You know, like that's gonna be so hard to try and get people to use anything but Git at this point.
Yeah, but if the AI is
using JJ, do you know what JJ is?
JJ is also like a Git wrapper / Git replacement. Which
Mark, he said it's simpler and more complicated than Git.
That's so funny.
He says if you don't have C matrix on your terminal, you're not a developer. I don't even know what that is, bro.
Yeah. So yeah, the reason I brought up the CodeGen Scoder thing that Angular is working on is like obviously we have some solid tests in there, and I want to expand that to include more like not just full stack apps, but like more complex state management stuff that we were talking about today. So ask it to build like a more complicated advanced form, dynamic fields, validation, or maybe like a real-time status page, something like that, and see how it does with that. And that would really help us to figure out like not just only what should the system instructions look like, but how should we structure documentation so that it's easier to access for Claude, or it's easier to read.
I find that, it's really a lot like something that's written well for a human is going to work well. Like if you had a tutorial of like how to create a form with explaining the complex form things you're going to do, like that's really all you would need, because if you only give it like an API reference, it will be able to know how to use the code in terms of like, it won't write type errors necessarily, but there's things about just having the code written with an English language explanation attached to it that gives it all the context it needs.
Don't know what seeing the matrix is like. It's just a bunch of green numbers falling on a black screen.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, I didn't know the program, and I knew about Superman 2. Dev didn't know about Superman 2.
I didn't know Superman 2. Yeah, I thought it was a Man of Steel reference.
Yeah.
What were we talking about,
So
Jess?
code LLM and
Yes.
Solid, and how to make sure it has the right context it
Mhm.
needs. So yeah, so I find having tutorials or guides
Mhm.
are even better than just straight code examples, because
Mhm.
they understand English. So be able to just explain things to them in
Mhm.
plain language that is paired with the code, because then it will know how to write the code by being able to look at the code, and it will understand the intention of the code because it can see what you wrote
Mhm.
about it. So I would say first, just think about other general guides or doc
Mhm.
pages that
Yeah.
don't yet exist, because you've done a good job of you document everything that's in the frameworks.
Mhm.
But beyond that, there's not much else in terms of like, if I
Yes.
wanted to build, and a checkout form that
Mhm.
connects to an email or something like that. Like I couldn't go to a guide that would, like, Redwood was great about this. It had like 20
Yes.
guides for like every random ass thing any developer would ever want to do in their
Mhm.
project. Like, you want to know how to do that? Here's your doc page, step by
Mhm.
step.
Yeah, definitely. 90% of getting better outputs from LLMs is just better docs. I'm hoping to also use AI to like get better at writing the docs and
Yeah,
like
totally.
keeping them up to date.
Mhm.
Um,
I can help you
the
with
other,
that. We should do another
yeah,
stream where we just kind of write one out together.
yeah, for sure, yeah. The other thing that I want to figure out how to fix is that I feel like Claude or any AI, it spends way too much time trying to just write code instead of just going and fetching the documentation. Like, I don't want to have to tell it, go read the documentation to figure this out. And
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to like find the link myself and then give it to the
Uh,
AI. If it's
yeah,
working
I've
well.
built a workflow around finding the links myself, because
Mhm.
I found that I don't trust it to find the right docs.
Mhm.
Really, I want to go look at the site's docs, figure out exactly what pages actually explain the thing you need. And then I built my own script so I can hand
Mhm.
it a row, a list of URLs, and it hits them all and writes them all. I'm extending the functionality of RepoMix in this
Yeah.
respect, because
Mhm.
RepoMix does actually do this. You can have it read remote URLs and stuff.
Mhm.
So I am the way I build my workflow basically ensures that there's almost nothing being left to the LLMs or the agents to figure out for themselves. So I spent a
Mhm.
little more time figuring out what is the correct context and
Yeah.
what is the correct instructions and what are the code files it needs, because I've gotten really good at that, and it very, very infrequently writes incorrect code now, unless I
Mhm.
told it to do too many things at once. That's the only time it fucks up now.
Are you also doing like spec-driven development stuff at all?
Spec-driven development, so like where you write out a spec first and how like do
Yeah.
each kind of step. No, I'm kind of doing that, I guess, with the migration. I
Mhm.
create like a 12-step migration guide. I find with that, because for me, the reason why my workflow works and why you
Mhm.
don't get bogged down and why it doesn't slow you down the way AI tools do slow a lot of developers down, because you're asking it to do a single thing that it should be able to do in one response,
Mhm.
and it should have everything it needs to do that correctly.
Yeah.
So I am asking it to make a small change that I can validate immediately, and the entire process of that
Mhm.
can take me like 60 seconds. But then if I chain 5 of those together, then I'm able to do something in 5 to 10 minutes that if I had it write a spec first and then it has to go through and check each one and
Yeah.
like update a markdown file, like I just find it can get confused doing that. And having it write the spec, which a lot of people say you should do, is actually a terrible idea. It will not write a good fucking plan. I don't know what people are thinking when they're telling people to do this. It will create so many unnecessary code files that do so much extra shit that you don't
Mhm.
need. It's a
Yeah.
really bad idea, actually. So you want to be really, really granular in terms of what you're asking them to do. So one, you could validate it yourself whether it works or not. And
Mhm.
that comes from like just having like the right test files,
Mhm.
and then keeping it scoped enough so that it will be able to make the change in a correct way without messing up another part of the project. And at this point, like I have such a fast iteration with this that like I feel like I just anytime I'm like using my app and I'm like kind of testing it out and I'm like, oh, this is the thing I want to fix. And I like boom, boom, boom. It like takes me a couple minutes, and then all of a sudden it's
Mhm.
fixed. And like it's I don't need to worry about it anymore. So I don't know. It's partly just because I have spent so much time iterating on this process over and over and over again, building my own custom scripts, my own custom CLIs, and my own custom everything to make this work. So I wouldn't necessarily tell someone to do what I'm doing, because they would yeah, exactly. So I add a non-vibe part of my thing, because that is why people say that the vibes can take you over. You don't want to be consumed by the vibes.
Yes.
You want to be vibing, but not too hard. If you vibe too hard, you're screwed. And that's why some people are very anti-AI. They see people vibing super hard, that you vibed all your customers' data into an S3 bucket. That's not good.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, I mean, I feel like vibe coding existed even before AI, because we used to paste errors into Stack Overflow and copy code from there without understanding what it is. But
yeah, that sounds awful.
It's just gotten worse. But yeah, I've definitely spent way too much time vibing and then ended up with a mess that I can't refactor. So I sympathize with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and so other things with like the making sure Solid's good for LLMs, I think a lot of it comes down to having good custom instructions yourself for your own project. So I can kind of show mine real quick. So I have mine kind of broken down into a, let's see, I think it's going to be.
Yeah, this is something I can definitely use help on, because I don't, my system instructions usually, I don't spend as much time on them as I should.
Yeah, so this I've been working on for like a year adding to this. So
Nice.
the first, so I first tell it, I'm going to ask you to either refactor my code, write a new feature, or fix a bug. So it knows it's going to be one of those three things it's going to be doing.
You're not sharing the screen.
Oh, I'm not sharing the screen, sorry. Yeah. Add stage, there we go. Boom, okay, thanks. So this is the first part, ask you to refactor my code, write a new feature, or fix a bug. And then I kind of explain it, how it should actually be responding. And this part's really important, because this ensures it's not giving you different pieces of different parts of your files that's changed, because then you're going and you're copy paste this little thing and putting it into a node. So that makes it really slow, and that can never compete with an agent. This is one of the biggest things that makes my thing work, because it'll give me like 3 or 4 complete code files that I just copy, paste, move, copy, paste, move, copy, paste, move. It takes me like 10 seconds to do. So it's a slight manual step, but because I tell it always has to write the entire code file, I'm always just copy pasting directly into a couple code files.
Is that not more expensive on tokens if it has to write the entire file?
But the speed I get by being able to always copy paste the entire code file at once makes up for it, and I don't pay by the token, because I'm on the max
plan. Fair, yeah.
And because I'm asking to make a small change, and the files have been designed in a way they're not too long, it ends up being worth it to have it write 90% of the tokens that have not changed, because of the manual. It saves so much time with the manual step that all that ends up being worth it in the end, at least in my calculus of how I'm creating this workflow. And I only respond with the code files that have changes. So sometimes it used to give me code files that hadn't changed at all. I'm like, that's obviously not useful. And then I tell it when it first responds. Here we go. So then I tell it, don't give me code in the first response. This is something Claude still does sometimes, doesn't actually listen to this instruction, but what it's supposed to do is it will write me out a little plan that basically says, here's what I'm going to do. Here's the files it's going to change. Here's the files I need to create. Here's the files that will be deleted. And it just writes me out a quick message like that. Because then if I see it does that and it says it needs to write 5 new files and edit 10 others, then like, that's too big. And then I kind of scope that down, or I ask it in multiple responses to give me just a subset of that. Because if you ask it to change too many things at once, then it can take a long time, and it can even exceed their Claude's response length. That's pretty rare though. Yeah. So you want to avoid doing that.
Yeah, I ran into that issue with the CodeGen scoder, because it the way it's built is that it wants the AI to respond with all the files that need to change in one shot, which obviously works with Gemini, which is the only thing that they tested it with, because it's built in Google. Yeah. But that does not work with Claude at all.
Yeah, unless you're only asking it to give you a couple files. Yeah.
Yeah.
Word, I should talk to them next. That's something I've thought a lot about. Then I tell it kind of how I like it to create my logs. This will be specific to how anyone likes to do their logging, but you want to make sure you tell it that, or else it just will kind of every time you tell it to write logs, it'll do something different, and then you have this huge mess of weird different logs that are all formatted differently.
Yeah, logging, it'll every single time I ask it to do logging, it will always create like an entire class, like a super complicated logger utility class, and then use it. Man, I just want some console logs spread
Well,
in.
also the real thing you want to do is you want to only do that once and do it in a way where it has the reusable logging functions, like warning error, success, stuff like that, that then it can pull from when it's writing new log functions.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
don't do it every time.
That's what I have. Yeah, it has different color coding and stuff like that. Then I have the section where I basically give it all of the coding conventions around JavaScript, TypeScript, Node, and then CSS modules. This used to be Tailwind, but I decided to try modules out for a bit, and it hasn't been too bad. It's more tokens, but I find that it actually is good for it to have the more level of control because it can do some really nice styling, honestly. So I tell things like, and this one's really important, to use ESM and things like async await, just like whatever the modern versions are, because it's trained on so much code, it sometimes will just default to require if you don't tell it otherwise. So I make sure that it knows it should be writing code in like the most modern kind of Node.js style. I also tell it not to use things like NodeMon or Jest or .env, because all of these are built into Node now, and you really don't need those dependencies anymore. And then I tell it to avoid just like spaghetti code things, like don't have a whole bunch of if then else then statements, and don't like create tons of like deeply nested loops and things. Like stick to like, functional kind of good practice type stuff.
Also small type tier functions.
Yeah, and then stuff around TypeScript, which this could probably be improved, but I tell it to not use things like TS Node and have a build step, but to stick with TSX. This will no longer be needed with Node really soon, and probably isn't necessarily needed now. And with Bun, it's definitely not needed. But that is, I find, makes it works a lot better for TypeScript. And then things like using .ts files, not .js. I tell it to infer types whenever possible. And when types must be declared, keep them minimal and just like inline instead of named. I'm not sure if I necessarily want that rule to still be here. I think I might want to change that one. And then I used to have it say never include return types, but now I say always include return types. Also not sure about that one.
Yeah, Claude, in my experience, is way too happy with any types.
Well, you could, so you could also do that. Say never use any
unknown. Yeah.
I definitely never use classes, only use functions.
Yeah, I always need to add that use Bun for package management. npm install is way too slow almost every single time.
So are you a fully Bun user now?
Not. I mean, yes, I use Bun basically whenever I can. I use it to like run one-off scripts. Currently, I'm using Bun to run an MCP server. Basically use Bun whenever I can, basically.
Yeah, I'm really close to that. I'm about to make the switch, I think.
Yeah, I only have to resort to PNPM if I'm working with an existing repository where someone else used PNPM. Mostly like open source stuff. So the web code Genscorer uses PNPM, Solid's Codebase uses PNPM. So those things I still have to deal with.
Yeah. So this is my whole custom instruction file. So it's not a ton of stuff, but it's enough and it's specific enough that it ensures it gives highly consistent code and it writes exactly the way I want. And it then also, because now I have a file, I have a project that was built with all these conventions, it is referencing those as well. So it's able to correlate these instructions with code in the project. So it just creates a very holistic, unified experience where it knows like exactly what to do in almost all situations. And a lot of this is specific to me and how I want my thing, but I would probably tell most people you should break it down in a similar way. Tell how you want your response to be, how you want things like logging to be, and then coding conventions for whatever your language or framework or whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah. I think the going back to the earlier point about like docs, I think the one thing that I always feel the need to add in these is that basically like ask it to be eager with fetching the finding documentation, and like maybe have some specific instructions that it can write that are like specific to the project. But basically, like don't spend more than 2 or 3 iterations if you're struggling with issues. Like just go and fetch the docs. I've had it like way too many times. It struggles with something because it doesn't have the latest knowledge, and then I have to ask it go like fetch documentation.
Yeah, and that's why I skip this step entirely by always finding the docs myself.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know, that makes sense though. That's a good instruction to add if you want to be doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's maybe like better ways to make make it easier for it to access docs on its own, so like you don't have to do the upfront work.
Yeah, that's basically what repo mix allows you
Mhm.
to do, or the script files I wrote, where I'm able to just take a bunch of URLs that just compress it all into a single just text thing that you then feed it. Because web search, just things get weird when it's doing web search because it might be scraping it, so it needs to like figure out what to do with the HTML, and there's just like a lot of issues. I find where I'm working, usually I can just find the .md files on the GitHub repo itself, and I just want if they don't have a copy to markdown button on their docs already.
Yeah.
So that I find works pretty well, and I try to just avoid making it do any sort of web search because it just adds another level of stuff that takes longer and has more chance of messing up.
Yeah, this is one of the things I really like about OpenCode. Their fetch tool, it always responds with markdown, so it's never going to provide the raw HTML response. It's
That's
going
what
to
Firecrawl does too. I like Firecrawl. It's a tool for scraping, you know, and getting these kind of things into an LLM.
Yeah, Firecrawl is like one level above that, where it's not only it's going to run in like a headless browser, but it's going to Firecrawl will actually use the entire response it gets out of it, and then use an LLM to parse it into the response that you want. OpenCode just uses a tool for that. It's some like simple conversion tool, HTML to Markdown, but it also strips away a lot of the unnecessary metadata. So it just makes it much easier to read for LLMs. Like you always get Markdown instead of HTML. But yeah, not every tool can do that.
Totally. Yeah, we were going to talk about OpenCode a little bit. They yeah, I don't know. The thing you told me is actually public, so I'm not going to mention it unless you do.
Yeah, it's not.
But yeah, okay, cool. Glad I didn't say it then. Yeah, no, but OpenCode, we talked about this a long time ago on a show when we did the MCP stream. I remember we looked at it, and I was like, this is going to be freaking sick. So, are you like using it in your like kind of day to day?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I'm playing around with more different features, like different agent modes with like custom instructions. I haven't done like any slash commands yet, but there's like a lot of features around not just like agent instructions, but it has plugins which could be used for some cool stuff. The thing that I am more excited about right now is like sub agents and multi-agent collaboration, where like an agent can give tasks to different background agents and then somehow collect information from them, orchestrate them together to do something.
That's wild.
It's super early in this. Like right now, there's a lot of thoughts around don't build multi-agent systems or only use multi-agent systems for these specific use cases. This is more of like I guess a very experimental thing that people have very different opinions and different approaches to.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Do you know Levels IO?
Yeah.
He's been talking about recently how he just like spins up like a VPS and just puts Claude Code on and just has it write code 24/7. And this is where a lot of this is going. And it's going to be wild. And it's really quite close to being able to just kind of constantly run in the background, just like serve up PRs for you. And you just give it like a to-do list of every feature idea you've ever had, and it will just like write them all. Like it's pretty wild, you know?
Yeah, I may or may not be working on something along those lines. I'm hoping it gets
that's a good URL.
Yeah, it's I'm hoping it gets like to a nice demoable
What's
state
an
pretty soon.
SDLC?
Software development lifecycle.
What does that mean?
It's just a fancy term for like basically the entire workflow of starting a project, building something, testing, deploying,
You should
monitoring.
share your screen and show this page.
The page.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me.
You just shared it in the chat. Like I could pull it up. I feel like it's your.
I mean, there's not much. There's not much happening. So it's not like me building it. It's our CEO who's building it, and
okay, gotcha.
We are planning on using it with our like consulting clients.
Gotcha.
Once it's done. Yeah. So it's like another take on spec driven, where when you write your specs, the specs can like there's like code generators that can take your specs and just give you fully kind of like well tested and like it's not going to be AI's law. Like these generators, they're not AI, they're like regular code generators that can look at your specs and then compile them basically into like fully functioning application logic, and then AI can fill in the gaps.
So it's kind of also combines like the scaffolding stuff you'd get from like a Rails,
Exactly, yeah. So it does all the scaffolding.
Cool.
It can write tests, and then once it has all the tests written, then the AI can just implement the rest. Basically, I call it like vibe coding gone deterministic, or bringing determinism into vibe coding.
Nice. No, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, we are hoping to use this with some clients, and I'm very excited about this project.
Just make sure you gotta capitalize the H in GitHub on your GitHub button. Right now it's all lowercase. It looks weird.
Yeah.
Auto engineer. Very cool. Supports Claude, OpenAI, Gemini, and Grok. I think I might add Grok back into AutoShow. Used to be in there, and then I took it out because it wasn't that great. But then Grok 3 came out and it was better. And I don't know. I feel like there's a certain type of person who's like, they just, because of how they feel about X, they think Grok is going to give them a less biased kind of response. I don't think that's actually true at all. I think it gives almost extremely similar opinions to other LLMs. And it's the only one that I haven't paid for the really expensive plan and tried the actual best model. So I don't know how heavy works at all. But I might drop the money just for 1 month to try. It's the most expensive, like $300, I think. So
yeah,
better be better for me to pay an extra $100 a month for it.
Yeah, I'm super excited about the new voice models. I think voice agents are when I think about like how I want to use AI in my day to day, not just like not just for writing code, but for like personal productivity stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people really enjoy that. Like that's why every AI ever in any sci-fi movie is always they're talking to it. They're never typing to it,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, a few days ago, like maybe 3 or 4 days ago, I had my earphones on. I was in my kitchen doing my dishes. And as I'm doing my dishes, I'm talking to ChatGPT and I'm doing like this entire research on like agent memory systems. And it like that was the closest I've ever felt to like Tony Stark and Jarvis.
Totally, yeah. No, that's very cool. Yeah. And that's, I remember when the term vibe coding first came around, that's what some people meant, is that you were like you were telling it what to do with your voice. That's less important to the term nowadays.
Yeah.
But I got very deep into text to speech stuff with AutoShow CLI that I'm about to now bring in. I'm going to just add a button to where if you want to turn your whatever your show notes are, just turn that to an audio file that's read to you. That's going to be probably the very next feature I add. And I love it. I'm at the point now where I'm creating entire audiobooks for myself. So I read weird stuff. So, I'm going to find this like old PDF that like, I can just grab the whole thing and throw it into a thing. And then I have like a 8-hour audiobook of like brand new content I couldn't listen to anywhere else.
That's basically what people are using Notebook LM for.
Totally, yeah. But Notebook LM won't just read the thing verbatim and create audio for it, though. I think it summarizes it first, right?
Yeah, it'll provide an overview or like a discussion commentary around it.
Yeah.
You can have different versions. So there's like a super concise summary, deep dive, and then now there's a debate mode as well. So it'll have two of them like talking back and forth. Yeah, I definitely need this. Like I definitely want to turn like all the newsletters and blog posts that I read into audiobooks for me.
That's actually, so have I told you about Auto Show Daily?
A little bit, I think.
Yeah, so this is because I've just been taking a long time to finish all the stuff on the site, I haven't done it yet, but I want to create a newsletter of it uses AutoShow to summarize all of the podcasts of the week for web and AI stuff. And then you could also then use the text to speech stuff to then turn that back into like a condensed podcast that would just summarize all the podcasts of the week for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna need that.
Good, you can be the first customer then.
Yeah, is it only going to use like podcasts and videos, or is it also going to like read blog posts? And
it could if I wanted to. That was honestly, man, that was what I was doing when I was working at Edgio for job. You remember the JavaScript Jam newsletter?
Yeah,
that was one of the first things I used AI for a lot, because I realized it could write me pretty good, summaries of some of these articles, and I would edit them to make sure they didn't have the AI slop kind of voice to them. But that saved me a ton of time, and I felt like I put out pretty good stuff with that. So yeah, I mean, there's been a disconnect here because the thing was originally built specifically to take audio and video files and then transcribe them and then do stuff with it. But the AutoShow CLI has the ability now to work with PDFs and just general text stuff. So all that's kind of converging into something where it doesn't matter what the medium is. It'll be able to grab your audio and video, be able to grab your text files. It'll be able to kind of put that all together in ways where you can just mix and match stuff.
Cool. Yeah. Audio input very unreliable in GPT and Claude. Yeah, audio input to me is still very unreliable on ChatGPT. I'm talking about their voice mode, which is different from the audio input.
What's the difference?
The voice mode is more like being on a call. So when you're
I don't know what audio input is. Like, I know what voice mode is.
I mean, audio input is just like it uses a microphone and it's speech to text basically, but it's using their speech to text models instead of like whatever you might have on your device or browser.
Interesting.
Yeah, voice mode is what I was talking about, and that's where I think a lot of really cool stuff can actually happen, because now, like especially now, like voice mode can actually properly call tools and MCP tools. Yeah, but the unfortunate thing is that GPT is not as good as Claude at calling tools. So I want like ChatGPT's voice mode, but with Claude's ability to call tools. And for a while, I was really excited about Alexa Plus. So I've been using Alexa for like 2 or 3 years, and they have been recently like beta testing a product called Alexa Plus, which is Alexa built on top of Claude. So it's an LLM, and honestly, that feels like the ultimate home assistant, where like AI assistant, because it has like all of Claude's powerful tool calling and language features with all the integrations that Alexa already has, which is like probably one of the biggest in like AI ecosystem, but it just doesn't work well yet.
Totally. I'm also kind of amazed how hard all of these home assistant things have dropped the ball, like including like, Siri, not exactly the same thing, but it's like, it should be so easy to just have all these things just hook into an LLM. Like none of them do it yet. It's been like 2 years. Like what's taking them so long?
Microsoft is the first one that's doing it with Copilot. So I've been seeing a bunch of
ads. What's the home device though?
Like any app really, like any phone. Like you can install the Copilot app, and it works basically like Siri, but it's using an LLM.
So what's different between just using the ChatGPT app?
Just like basically like voice mode, I guess, and camera video feed. Like you can show video feeds directly. Yeah, not much. It's just like a more Siri-like feel on top of the same thing.
I mean, Copilot is the OG. Copilot was the first thing that people were using LLMs for, and devs were using it. They didn't even know what a freaking LLM was at the time.
Yep. Most devs still don't know what LLMs are. I still don't know what LLMs are truly. Like,
I mean, I think if you were to say to someone what is an LLM, they would at least be able to say ChatGPT, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, they know what it means in that respect, but you're right. I mean, no one knows what an LLM is. People who make LLMs don't know what LLMs is.
Mm-hmm. Voice model will stop listening in the middle of me speaking. I have not had that experience yet.
Have you tried being mean to it?
I have not. Why would I be mean to our AI overlords?
I'm so mean to our AI. I'm gonna be the first one putting the wood chipper when they take over.
Yeah, I mean,
they'll have a whole long list of every conversation I've ever had with them. They're like, "You have sentenced to 900 counts of battery against the machines."
Exactly. Yeah, I already know there's gonna be like some AI taking over somewhere, so I'm like, why even bother being mean?
I'm betting on it being ruthless enough that I'd be like, "Hey, you saw how I treated the other AI. You need to keep me around." Cool, man. We're about 2 hours and 40 minutes in. We definitely crushed the record for longest AJC in the web dev episode yet.
Yeah, we almost went like 50% of Ryan streams.
Yeah, totally. Do you have any final call to actions or things to talk about?
Solid 2.0 coming out at some point next year, probably.
Yeah, as that's developing, I will definitely help like beta test stuff, because now that I'm like going all in on Solid, I want to find ways to actually kind of get more involved in the community and help with stuff. So I think that would be a good opportunity for me to add some value there.
Sure, yeah. If you are in the Discord, the next channel on the Discord is where all the discussions around 2.0 happen. Show up there. Solid Start is getting better and better every day now that we have people on a payroll that are working on it, not just like
awesome.
random really community contributors. So there's 3 fellows, and then there's a new core team member working on Solid Start. It's gonna get only better and better. I'm very soon going to find a way to introduce like real-time features into it. I don't want SwellKit to beat us to it at all.
Do you think AutoShow needs any real-time features?
I'm
assuming no.
I mean, so it's like there's like let me put it this way: every app can benefit from real-time features.
So how would AutoShow benefit? Is my question.
Yeah. So I was actually gonna ask when you showed it earlier, like when you kick off like an AutoShow process, whatever, like processing in the background. Do you have like live status updates on the page, or do you have to refresh the page to see what's happening?
So no, you don't need to refresh. What it does is the sidebar, it has all 5 steps, and they're tracking what's happening, and there's loading spinners every time something's running in the background. So as soon as something finishes, the loading spinner kicks off, and then the next loading spinner starts. And so that's how you have some visual feedback in terms of the sidebar, where it will show you which things are processing in the background. Right. And then if you get to the final step and it's not done, it will actually read you out which step it's on as it goes through them.
Right, but how does it know which step is done? Like, how does the server tell the client, like, hey, this step is done now? Does the client have to, like...
It basically, I think it's just polling and just waiting for a response, essentially, because the first thing it does is it has to download the YouTube video and then save it to an R2 bucket and then give you that R2 bucket back. So then you know you're done, and then you give it to the transcription thing. Then it's running, and when you get the transcription back, you know the transcription is done.
Okay.
And then with LLM, once you get the LLM back, you know it's done,
Right. So each step is triggered separately from the client, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So in a scenario where, like, if you move all that orchestration to the server, like you only make one request to the server, and then
it is doing it all on the server, I think, because there's a bunch of background functions that are making fetch calls. And honestly, I don't really know. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I do not know the answer to this question.
Yeah. So it's like, the work is definitely happening on the server, but then there's an orchestration layer on top of it that what I'm hearing is currently lives on the client. Like, go to do the transcription when the transcription finishes.
It does, yes, because it's a bunch of functions that are being imported into the client components.
Yes. So which means, like, if I start transcription and if I close the tab, what happens? Is the
So the way it manages that is that it initially with the very first step, once it's done with that, it creates a new show note for you. So if you ever want to come back to it, you can do that and step back into the flow. So there is a way to do that, and that has to do with basically how it persists after each step.
Okay. So, but it's not going to keep running the entire thing while the app is closed, right? I have to have the app open for it to continue.
I mean, once you get to the last step, you could close it and it'll go all the way to the end.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, not in the middle.
Well, in the middle is just because if you stop it, then you can't give it the next instructions to go to the next step to get to the end. So it will just stop at whatever the last step you gave it instructions on.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I meant about the orchestration logic living on the client. If this entire thing is something you want to do in the background, so that I can close the app, and it still does everything to completion, regardless of where I left off. Then that would be a thing that, first of all, you would need to move the orchestration logic to the server.
But I'm saying I think it does do that, because I'm saying that the only reason why it wouldn't do that is because like it can't run the LLM step until you told it what LLM you want. Like once you've gone through the form and you've selected everything, you can close the tab and it will finish. Yeah.
Okay. So then maybe I need to look at the code at some point to understand what's going on.
Because basically what I have it do is I have it just go through each step, and it kind of knows that once one step is done, if it has the information it needs to go to the next step, then it will go to the next step. So you could blaze through the whole form, click everything really fast. And even if you are still downloading the media at step 1, it has everything it needs for step 2, 3, and 4. And so as it processes each of them, we'll get to the next. It's all saved in the state, you know? So it's able to then figure out what it needs to do next. So once you've given it all those instructions, if you close the tab, it will still run everything in the background, and it already has all the state to make all the decisions it needs to get to the last step, where it then writes it to the R2 bucket at the end.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'll definitely want to probably look at the code of this, but this is in my head, this is something that could benefit from more real-time capabilities, where once you have all the information, you give it to the server, and the server just kicks it off. And then maybe I could have like the app also open on my phone, where I can see the updates, especially if this is something that takes a much longer time,
right?
Like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. If it's something that's going to take that long, then I would want to.
It shouldn't take longer than 5 to 10 minutes, but that can be a decent amount of time. Yeah. And I wanted to also get to the point where once you get to the last step, instead of waiting for it to finish and then redirecting you, it basically just starts you back at the beginning and says, this is running, I'll let you know it's done. You can start a whole new one while that is happening. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Cool, man. Yeah. Once I get the solid start back API migrate over, we'll have a whole bunch more to talk about and look at.
Cool. I'm excited.
So I really appreciate you doing this. Like, this is so much super, super useful targeted advice and really fun stream. I'm definitely going to create some clips from this, so watch out for those. And then had a bunch of people in the chat today, so thanks to everyone. Jay Larky's probably the only one still around, but thanks for watching. This is one of my probably most watched streams ever. It says we have 1,200 people watching right now, which is obviously not a correct number, but it's certainly more than the 30 that it usually says.
Yeah, I think it was probably Ryan's retweet or something.
Word. Yeah, thanks, Ryan, for stepping in. All right. Bye, everyone. We'll catch you next time.